All right. Well, thanks for chiming in there, ladies. Feel free to keep popping in there and letting us know where you're calling in from. Oh, there's an Ohio. So big welcome to all of you. We're going to jump right in, and I'm going to introduce our yogi for the day, Mary Bew. Mary Bew is a yogi, singer, songwriter, world traveler, all-around amazing person. We are so thrilled that she is with us and able to lead us in yoga this morning. So I am going to turn it over to her in just a moment. Just a reminder, we'll have 45 minutes of yoga. Then we'll be moving all of you back into the waiting room for about a 15-minute break. And then right at the stroke of 1 o'clock Central Time, we'll bring everyone on back. So if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to pop those into the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to Mary. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you so much, Bethany, and welcome everyone. Just want to thank with all of my heart, all of the organizers. This has just been such an incredible conference series. So again, my name is Mary. So happy to be with you this afternoon. I'm coming from Minneapolis and it's pouring down rain today. I have been inviting a plant ally into all of our yoga sessions, and today the one that I chose is sunflower. So we'll be inviting the energy of sunflower into our practice this morning. And before we get started with moving, I just want to remind everyone, I know you know this already, that you hold all the wisdom in your body. Please listen to what feels safe and comfortable. Feel free to make any other choices. Rest, adapt, modify. I wish we were all in a room together. It could be a little more assisting, but listen to your body, take care of yourself, feel free to rest. So just a little bit about the energy of sunflower. It's an incredibly powerful plant with so many beneficial uses. Songbirds love eating the seeds. Sunflowers have the beautiful oil for eating and also nice for some skin types. It's the bright yellow color can be a pigment for dyeing clothes. You can make paper out of it. The petals can be edible, can make flour out of it. And it's also can remove nuclear radiation. So maybe if you're into deeply studying sunflower, let me know other uses that you come up with. But we'll be inviting the vibrant energy of the sun on this gloomy day. And one thing to think about is how the sunflower moves its face to look at the sun. So we'll be adding some of those movements in. So to begin, we'll come into a comfortable seat. So feel free to sit however is comfortable. Some of these, you can do these movements in a chair and just invite the arm movements, of course. And again, just listen to your body. So coming into your comfortable seats, feel free to sit on a pillow or a blanket. And I invite you to maybe shake your hands out or take a couple rolls of the shoulders. And perhaps you'd like to close your eyes or let your gaze be soft. And we'll just take a few minutes to fully arrive. Allow the sound of the chimes to signal the beginning of your practice. Taking these next 40 or so minutes to come into your body, come into this present moment, and just seeing about letting the rest of the world just gently fade into the background of your mind. Noticing the way that you're seated and just feeling rooted down from the way that your legs are positioned, your sits bones, the base of your spine. And whenever your next inhale arrives, feel your spine lengthening up the crown of your head like the face of the sunflower lifting up towards that bright blue sky. starting to settle into the rhythm of your breath. I invite you to slow down, gently lengthen your inhale, and slow down and gently lengthen your exhale. Sensing into that inhale, the expansion and lift of your ribs opening. Exhale, maybe gently draw your navel in towards your spine. Feel that navel center hugging in. Just giving yourself a few moments to feel and sense into your breathing. Letting your breath be an anchor for the time that we spend together. On your next inhale, if you would like, visualize a glowing yellow golden light. You can inhale this golden yellow light. Maybe visualize it coming in through the center of your chest. And as you exhale, see if you can sense that golden warm glow radiating out through the rest of your body and beyond. Like big rays of the sun radiating out. Inhaling that warm golden light. Exhale, feel it radiating, diagonal rays of light out. Filling your cells, filling your space. Allow your arms to drift down on the floor beside you. And when your next inhale comes, gently sweep both arms up towards the sky. And as you exhale, float your arms down, gently lower your chin towards your chest. And we'll just take that a few times. Inhale, maybe sensing into that golden light, warm glow coming in. Exhale, radiating rays of warm, glowing light outward. One more, just like that. Inhale. And exhale. Right. From here, let's transition to our hands and knees. So go ahead and if you have a mat, just position yourself in the middle. If you don't have a mat, you're just on the floor, that's perfect too. Setting yourself up on all fours. And I invite you to take your knees a little wider than your hips and let your fingers fan open. And we'll take a big inhale, lengthen the spine, lengthen through the crown of your head. And then as you exhale, float your hips down and back towards your heels. You could choose to bend your elbows or let your arms be straight as you lower your head towards the mat. And just take a few breaths here, feeling supported from the earth below. It might feel right to gently rock your hips side to side or rock your head side to side. Sensing into the back of your body. And we'll start to move gently with the breath. Inhale, rise up to your hands and knees, lengthen through the crown of your head. And exhale, float your hips down and back. Inhale to come back up to all fours, to hands and knees, lengthen. And exhale, gently sink down and back, hips towards heels, belly towards thighs. Inhale, rising up. Just taking this a few more times. Exhale. It's called child's pose, hips to heels. And one more, moving with your breath. And floating down, hips to heels. Great. Rise on up to your hands and knees again. And if you took your knees wide, bring them just a little closer together. And have your eyes open. Eyes open will help with balance. And we'll start to stretch the right leg back. So lengthen through the right leg. Take a moment, you maybe circle your ankle, point your toe, point back through your heel. Eyes open for balance. See about the pelvis. Notice if it's lifting, try and level it out so it's parallel to the ground. And you can stay right here with your leg lifted, or you could reach your left arm forward. So a little balance challenge here. This is called sunbird. So those beautiful songbirds coming to the sunflower seeds. Inhale, extend and reach, sunbird. And then exhale, gently lower those limbs down and take a moment to reset. And we'll stretch back through the left leg, lifting to hip level, or the toes could stay on the floor if that feels more supportive. Perfect. Take a moment again to circle around the ankle, point the toes, flex through the heel, level your hips out so they're parallel to the earth. Eyes open for balance, and then maybe try reaching the right arm forward. Reaching through both limbs, radiate that breath out. Big inhale, extend, feel your balance, and then flow down the limbs. And again, just take a moment to gently rock here. Do one more thing on the hands and knees, then give the wrists a break. Let your belly start to gently drop down. Lift your chin, lift your tailbone. On your next exhale, round the upper back. Tuck your chin, tilt the tailbone down. Inhale into a little baby back bend. Lift the chin, lift the tailbone. And exhale, round the upper back. Tuck the chin, tailbone down. Let's take that a few more times. Inhale to a back bend, breathing space between the vertebrae. Exhale, arching like a cat. Inhale to back bend, lift the chin a little bit, lift the tailbone. And exhale, arching like a cat. Gently coming back through your hands and knees. Walk your hands just a tiny bit further forward, a little bit wider than your shoulders. And start to tuck your toes under, press into your hands, gently lift your knees up, feel the strength in the arms, and then press the hips up and back. Keep your knees soft. Glance briefly at your wrists and make sure that the wrists are nice and long. And then here, let your head be heavy next to your upper arms. Take a little movement through the legs if you wish. Bend one knee, then the other. Sensing into the back of the legs. One more breath here. And then slowly start to walk your feet and your hands towards each other. Nice and mindful and slow. Keeping the knees nice and soft, let the head be heavy. It might feel right to support yourself, hands on the legs, or grab onto your elbows with opposite hands and just sway. Giving into gravity, whatever your choice is here. Knees are soft. Maybe a little bounce. If you're holding your elbows, eventually release and just start to walk your hands up the legs, coming up to standing. Then when you arrive in standing, wherever you land on your mat is perfect. Let your arms come down by your sides. You can choose to close your eyes or let your gaze land somewhere. And just take a moment to feel yourself acclimating to being upright again. Inhale, the crown of your head extending up to your ceiling, to your sky. Exhale, that gentle engagement at the navel center. Sensing into both feet. See about how even you're feeling. Maybe a little shift side to side. Just feeling those feet rooting down. And then open your eyes if they're closed and set your gaze somewhere on the ground that isn't moving. Keep a steady focus. And then inhale, sweep your arms and start to lift your heels just a tiny bit. Lifting the heels. As you exhale, slowly lower your heels and your arms. We're inhaling, coming up to the tippy toes, reaching up towards the sky, getting tall. And exhale, floating down, lower the heels, lower the arms. Let's do one more just like that. Wonderful. We're going to add on a little movement here. So inhale, lift your heels a little bit. Reach your arms up. Stay with your arms reaching. And then exhale, turn your torso to the right. Turning towards the sun. Inhale, back through center. And then exhale, turn, staying on the toes, turning to the left. Inhaling back, lowering the heels, lowering the arms. We'll do that one more time. Steady, slow gaze. Inhale, everything lifts up. Turn to the right, stay on the toes if available. Inhale, center, reach up, even higher, and then turn again. Great. Focus. Lower your heels, lower the arms, and just take a moment, gently bend the knees. Good. So from here, if you're wherever you are on your mat, just gently step to the back of your mat if you're on a mat, and set up your feet comfortable distance apart. We'll take a little turn of the left toes out to the side, and then a big step forward through the right foot. And each lane, or each leg gets its own lane. So they're not, try not to be directly in back of each other, just a little wider for stability. And then bend into your front knee. Make sure you can still see your big toe. And if you can't, just walk that a little further forward, back heel rooting down. Bringing your forearms, elbows, palms together. And then as you inhale, open the elbows, expand and lift the chest. As you exhale, straighten your knee, bring the elbows back together. Start to move with your breath. Inhale, come forward, opening up that warm golden light. Exhale back. We'll have a lot of opportunities to link our breath and movements in this session. So just feeling, sensing into your rhythm of breath. It'll be different than mine, different than everyone in the Zoom, in the space. Lift on inhale, come on back to exhale. Then go ahead and bend your front knee to stay for a few breaths. As you're staying, inhale, reach your arms up. Exhale, bend your elbows, lower your chin towards your chest. Inhale, like you're reaching, growing up towards that golden sun. Exhale, draw that warm, strong energy into your body. Reach up, inhale. Exhale, draw it down. And one more here, inhaling, getting really tall. And exhale, bending your elbows. Straighten your knee, let the arms float down. Stay here with this wide stance. And if you step your feet really, really wide, maybe shorten it just a tiny bit. Bring your hands to the front of your hips and open the hips up to the front of your space. And then here, let's have hands at heart. Keep your front knee soft. Take a big inhale. As you exhale, start to fold forward, keeping your front knee just slightly bent, just soft. Come down about halfway. And then inhale, rise back up. If you'd like a little more stability, let your hands come to the front of the legs. Let your hands support you. Exhale, halfway down again. Inhale, walk your way back up. And we're just sensing into the back of our right leg. Beautiful, strong hamstring muscle. One more time. This time, option to stay for a couple of breaths. So you can come about halfway down. Your hands can be at your heart. Or you could walk your way even further down if that feels comfortable. Let your hands maybe touch the floor, your shin, your thighs. Let your head be heavy for 2 more breaths. Bringing your awareness to the outside of your right hip and just gently press back, even energetically pressing the right hip back. 1 more breath. And then to come out of this, gently bend into that front leg. Walk your hands up. Nice and easy. Step the feet together. And give yourself a moment in between. Maybe close the eyes. Sense your heart beating, circulation. It's bringing our awareness to different parts of the body as we circulate energy. One more breath in this neutral stance. And then travel once again to the back of your mat or the back of your space. And we'll set up our feet again, comfortable, stable distance apart. Turn the right toes out just about 40 to 45 degrees. Big old step with the left leg. Angling your hips and shoulders forward. Checking in with that front knee, bending your front knee. Make sure you can still see your big toe. And you can always bend less or shorten your stance. Here, let's have the arms down by the sides. As you inhale, bend your front knee. Sweep your arms up, open and lift your chest. As you exhale, straighten your knee and lower the arms. One of my favorite movements, in and out. Feel the expansion on your inhale and the grounding on your exhale. Inhale, open and lift, reach up towards that blue sky. Exhale. Inhale here in Minneapolis, reaching up towards the rain, nourishing rain. Exhale, arms down. Next time you come in, please stay. As you're staying, every inhale, maybe again, visualize that warm golden light coming in through the center of your chest. Exhale, feel it radiate out, rays of light through the fingers, through the feet, beyond the periphery of your body. Sweep your arms out in front of you with the palms facing up. And you can choose to keep your palms open or make little fists. As you inhale, pull your elbows back, squeeze the upper back shoulder blades together, and then turn your palms forward and exhale, press to the front of your space. Palms turn up, inhale, elbows pull back, shoulder blades squeeze together, and then palms forward, pressing out in front. Let's take a few more of these. Inhale, golden light. Exhale, send it out. Inhale, nourishing, glowing light. Exhale, send it out into your space. Inhale, go ahead, lower your arms, straighten the knee. Maybe a little shorter stance. Just take a moment. We're going to do that forward fold. If it feels more stable to widen your feet out to the sides a little bit more, feel free to adjust. Keep your front knee soft, hands at the heart or at your hips or on the top of the thighs. Big inhale. We're exhaling halfway down. Inhale, slowly root through the feet, come back up. So moving with your breath, just easing into what this feels like in the back of our left legs, our collective left legs. If you're in a chair, folding forward, letting your hands support you. One more time, up and down. Option to stay folded forward here. Hands can start to walk down that front leg. Make sure your front knee is soft. Maybe hands come to shins, thighs, fingertips to the floor. Let your head be heavy. Lengthen the back of the neck. 2 more breaths. Press back energetically through the outside of the left hip. 1 more breath. And then gently bring your hands back to your front leg. Bend into your left knee. Let your hands support you as you walk back up. Stepping the feet together and taking a moment in between, a little side to side, couple circles through the shoulders. Wonderful. So let's take our hands and make like you're holding little orbs of light or oranges perhaps, and then bring your cupped fingers on top of your shoulder sockets, shoulder joints. And then here we're just going to circle the elbows forward and then back. So just feel into the shoulder joint. Feel into the sternum, center of the chest. Expanding, just letting the breath flow as it wants for these movements. And then let's reverse direction, taking the elbows back around and coming forward. I understand we'll be doing some writing today, so just easing up so that our heart can extend through our arms as we're writing. Let's do one more big circle here. Awesome. Let the arms drift down. And let's step our feet wide. So if you're on a mat, you can step sideways. If you're not on a mat, just step your feet wide. And then turn your toes out towards the edges of your mat. Keep your knees nice and soft. And here, big sweep through both arms. And just start to gently bend into your knees and bend your elbows for goddess pose. Inhale, reach back up, reach to the sky. Exhale, bend your knees, bend your elbows. Inhale, reach, straighten the knees. Powerful exhale, bend your knees, bend your elbows. Nice. One more just like that. Inhale, reach and lengthen. Here, keep your arms reaching. And as we exhale, we're going to bend our right knee and just turn the torso over to the right. Inhale, come back through center, soft bend in the elbows. Bend the left knee, turn the torso to the left. Inhale, center, reach. Bend to the right and turn your torso. Inhale, straighten, lengthen. And exhale, a little twist. Take care of your knee. Don't have to bend too deep here. Just rotating gently one way, like the sunflower turns to the sun. One more time. Reach up and lengthen. Let your arms take a big circle down to the front of your thighs. Take a big shoulder circle. And let's just let the hands guide our way down to the forward fold. So letting the fingers come to the floor or your legs. Fingertips support you. Maybe you'd like to step your feet a little wider. And here, just I like to give a little free time in this posture. You might like to take some lunging, side to side, bend one knee and then the other. You might like to just really hang heavy towards the earth. Let your head go, let your neck go, let your hands support you. Sensing into the stability in your feet. If it feels safe to lift the hands up and swoop them around behind your back, maybe clap your hands together and interlace your fingers behind the back. And then lift away. Sometimes the shoulders aren't up for that, so just listen to your body. Take about 3 more breaths, moving, intuiting what your body might be craving in that forward fold. Taking care to let go of the head and neck. Deep exhale, releasing. And when you feel complete, let your hands release if they were connected behind your back. Fingertips to the floor. Start to heel toe your feet a little closer together. Let your hands come on back to the legs as you guide your way back up to standing. And let's just take a little pause in between stepping the feet together and just sensing the benefits of turning ourselves, inverting ourselves, taking that fresh blood into the brain, fresh oxygen into the blood. Feel your heart beating as things start to move back, flowing down. And we'll step our feet wide one more time. So feet step out. You can choose to have your toes angled to the edges of the mat or facing forward. Doesn't matter for this one. We're going to stretch our arms wide out to shoulder height. Reach through your fingers. Feel that brightness across the torso. Take a big inhale here. As we exhale, we're going to side bend over to the right. Reach up through the left arm. Maybe look up. Inhale through center. Keeping a soft bend in the knees here. Exhale to the other side. Inhale through center. Exhale to the right. Breathe into the left side body. Inhale, center, nice. Exhale to the left. Inhale, center. We're gonna head to the right and stay for a couple of breaths. So feel like you're gently resting up against a warm, sunny wall. The shoulders stacking, the hips gently stacking, our top arm reaching up. Bottom hand can support somewhere on the legs. And if you'd like to stretch that top arm even further over, breathe space in between those luscious ribs, the intercostal muscles. One more breath on this side. And slowly come back through center. Big inhale. Let your heart center be the pivot as you turn to the left. We're side bending to the left, leaning lightly against that warm, sunny wall, top arm reaching up, knees are soft. Maybe take that big sweep up and over a little bit more. Breathe in between the ribs, maybe even on the outside of your hip for 2 more breaths. Head in a comfortable space, maybe looking up. 1 more breath. And then slowly start to come back. Reach those arms 1 more time, palms open, like we're reaching out to each other through the Zoom. And then let your arms float down by your sides. Very nice. Step the feet gently together. And then if you're sideways, go ahead and turn towards the front of your space again. And offer a balanced posture. For balancing, the wall is always our friend. Chairs are our friends. If you're on carpet, just have a little sense of humor. It's harder to balance on carpet. So first, begin feeling nice and even on both feet. Feel your center of gravity at the low core, low abdomen, navel center. And then we're opening our arms wide again. And we'll take the right elbow underneath the left. Link your elbows, and you can choose to give your shoulders a hug or have your forearms up and see about wrapping your forearms around each other. So both options are great. And while we're here, let's just take a little circling through the elbows. One direction, like you're drawing a circle through the elbows, with the elbows, and then reverse direction. Sensing into your upper back, back of the neck, shoulder blades. Come to stillness. And your choice, you can press down into the chest, or you can lift the elbows up to shoulder height. Keep a soft bend in your knees here. Choosing option 1 to stay balanced on both feet, perfect. Option 2, shift your weight over to the right leg. Lift the left foot and cross at the ankle, toes on the floor. Option 3, sit into a little baby chair, hips down and back. Lift up the left leg and cross thigh over thigh. Thighs squeezing together, elbows squeezing together. If your thigh is crossed, maybe try to tuck your foot behind your calf. Take a little time to play with this. See about lining the elbows up over the knees. Settle your gaze somewhere that isn't moving, and we'll take 3 more breaths here. This posture is called eagle pose. Directing our eyes on a point of focus. 1 more breath. And then flying out of it when you're ready on your next inhale, like an eagle. And set those limbs down. Take a little time in between. Maybe wiggle your fingers or circle the shoulders. And again, sensing into your strong core, just below the navel. Center of gravity. Here we'll open and expand the arms again. And then sweep the left elbow under the right, or whatever was opposite in your body. Hug your shoulders or wrap the forearms around each other. And here again, we'll draw some circles with the elbows. And reverse direction, maybe tuck your chin, make this movement yours. Excellent. Coming to stillness and making that choice to press down into the chest or keep your elbows lifted to shoulder height. Settle your gaze somewhere that isn't moving. Start to shift over onto the left leg, keep your knee soft, and then maybe cross the ankle, right leg over, right foot over ankle or over left ankle. Or sit into your baby chair and cross the right leg over the left. Always feel free to stay standing on both feet. Feel the sole of your foot like shooting roots down deep like a sunflower. Every inhale, lengthen through the crown of your head. One more breath, inhaling. And next time your inhale comes, releasing, flying open like an eagle. And let those arms float down, beautiful. Just giving yourself another shrug of the shoulders. It's a big bind for the arms, so let's just let the arms float themselves up, releasing the shoulders. Inhale, arms float up, maybe wiggle your fingers. Exhale, wiggle, sparkle your fingers down as you lower the arms, maybe lower your chin. And one more, sweeping up, sparkling through the fingers, reaching towards the sun. And this time, exhale, softening your knees, starting to fold forward. Let's take our hands to the shins and inhale, lengthen the spine, straighten the legs a little bit. Feel the crown of your head extending forward, getting really long. And then exhale, bend your knees nice and deep so your hands can come to the floor and walk your way, feet away from hands, hands away from feet, coming into a downward facing dog, this kind of pyramid shape. We're pressing our sits bones, back of the pelvis up and back. Knees are soft. Let the head be heavy. Take a little movement through the legs. A couple more breaths here. On your next inhale, lower down onto your knees. And you can feel free to widen the knees for a little bit more room to breathe. And exhale, hips towards heels, belly towards thighs, forehead towards the earth. Maybe make a little pillow for your head with your hands and rest for a couple breaths. Feel your heart beating. Feel your circulation. Smooth and lengthen the breath. One more big breath here. And start to slowly find your way to your back. So go ahead and roll onto your back. And once you land on the back, bring your knees to your chest. Give yourself a big hug here and just take a little rocking. Massage out the back of the hips and pelvis. And let's bring our hands onto the floor with the knees bent towards the chest. And as you inhale, stretch your feet, shine your soles of your feet to the sky. Option to sweep the arms up and over, all the way back behind you. Reach behind you if you like. As you exhale, next exhale, bring your knees down to your chest. Give your knees a big hug. We're going to match that with the breath. Inhale, feet up, arms up, stretch through the limbs. Exhale, bend your knees, give them a hug. Option to lift your head, nose towards your knees, giving yourself a bundle roll. Inhale, feet up, arms up, stretch through the heels and fingers. Exhale, curl in. Feel the sun in the center of your body. Give it a hug. Inhale, 2 more times. Accept this stretch. Exhale, hug. Last one, inhale. And exhale. Gently lower your head. Gently lower your feet. Walk your feet a little wider than your hips. Take your arms out to the sides. When your exhale comes, drop your feet to the, or excuse me, your knees to the right. Turn your head to the left. Gently moving with your breath, inhale, center, and twist the knees left and the head right. Inhale, center. Exhale, twist. Inhale, center. And exhale, twist. I invite you all to move through this a couple more times. Luxuriously feeling into your beautiful spine. And check in, see if you'd like any additional movement before integrating and taking a few minutes of rest. Your body might crave a little bit of knee circles, or maybe stretching, a big full body stretch radiating out through the limbs. Whenever you're ready to be still, just find the most comfortable resting place that you can. You can be on your back in that kind of splayed out, arms wide, taking up space. You could have a pillow underneath the knees or underneath your head. If you're expecting, you might like to rest on your side with a pillow under your head. So taking a little time to set up for just a brief bit of resting. Adjust so that you're so comfortable and know that you can move at any time. I invite you to close your eyes or let your gaze be really soft. Perhaps hold that visual of inhale, bright golden light. Exhale, feel it radiate through the limbs, beyond you, beyond your home, out into the greater world. Sun shining down for everyone equally. Warmth and nourishment within and without. May the long time sun shine upon you. All love surround you. And the pure light within you guide your way on. Guide your way on. Guide your way on. Invite you to stay resting in your space as we transition into our writing, integrating movements and breathing, and may your body feel at ease for the next hours together. The spirit in me honors the spirit in you. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Mary. So nourishing. All right, ladies, we will see you back in about 15 minutes. All right, welcome back, ladies. Ashley, take it away.
Hello and welcome to In Our Own Hands, our Winter Wellness series. I see some familiar faces popping on. Hello. Today is the fourth session of the series, the Women's Writing Workshop, calling forth your inner counsel of wise, brave, crazy, rebellious, loving, luminous self with Dominique Christina. And for those of us who are new to the Midwest Women's Herbal, we provide opportunities for herbal and mushroom education, as well as personal transformation through a variety of in-person and now virtual events. Using the wise woman tradition, we gather and weave ourselves, our families, and our communities into a dynamic spiral of health in the universe. This is our 10th year gathering and our first year launching a winter wellness series. I hope you've enjoyed the series so far. And if you haven't heard already, we do have our 10th annual spring conference coming up the first weekend in May. This year's theme is healing the earth, the people, and the plants. It's a wonderful opportunity to learn from world-changing thinkers and movers from around the globe, discussing women's wisdom and herbalism. We're excited to hear from all of our presenters, especially our keynote speakers, Vandana Shiva, Rosemary Gladstar, and the Indigenous activist Lila June. We have opportunities for vending, work exchange, scholarships, and more. You can find that information on our website, which is going to be linked in the chat. And if you haven't already signed up for the rest of our In Our Own Hands series, we highly recommend it. There's an awesome lineup of presenters left to go leading up to the spring conference in May. And just like today, each session starts with yoga led by the wonderful Mary View. Thank you, Mary. I really needed that refresh. So I hope you all will join us in continuing to learn how to discover our own voices, nourishing ourselves, and partnering with herbal medicine to heal ourselves and those around us. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to our programming coordinator, Bethany, who's going to introduce today's speaker.
Thank you, Ashley. Hello, everyone. I am absolutely honored and thrilled to introduce today's presenter, Dominique Christina. Dominique is an award-winning poet, author, educator, and activist, with her work being influenced by her family's legacy in the civil rights movement. She holds 5 National Poetry Slam titles in just 4 years. She won the National Poetry Series in 2017, and her collections of poetry include They Are All Me, This Is Woman's Work, and others. We were privileged to have Dominique share her poetry with us at last year's virtual spring conference. And the way the strength and truth in her words spoke to us and all the women there was simply incredible. And we knew we had to invite her back so even more women could experience the deep introspection and the deep emotion she's able to elicit. So get ready, because we're going to experience that today. And as a reminder, if you have any questions as we go, you can type them into the chat and I'll relay them as I'm able. So without further ado, we warmly welcome Dominique Christina. Welcome, Dominique.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Okay. I don't know what kind of day everyone has had. I don't know how your morning began. I don't know what baggage, what skeletons, I don't know what plagues your spirit, if there is anything at this time. Equally, I don't know what you're presently celebrating, what you are content with, what you are elated over. I don't know the details of your lives, and we have a short time together. In our time together, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of what the expectations are and what the hopes are, what you hope to gain from our time together. So that's one thing that you are invited to put in the chat, and then, you know, it can be relayed to me. Bethany can let me know. But if there's something that you want to make sure that I name or ask or answer, please share that. If there's a certain thing you really, really hope to leave with, please share that. Okay. One of my superpowers is meeting expectations or exceeding them. So I really do want you to name that which you need. And I'll do my very best to get it for you or get it to you. As a way of beginning, let me say this. This is a generative workshop, which means I'm going to say things and ask things of you to get you writing, okay? You'll always know how long or what I'm looking for. You'll always know if this particular exercise needs at least 2 to 3 people to share, or if the exercise is just intended for you to sort of crack open something in your consciousness. Keep it, use that raw material for yourself later, but we're going to move on, and there would be no ask in terms of sharing, okay? I'll always name these things. This workshop, though, is not, in the more traditional sense, it's not a writing workshop. A writing workshop is interested in sort of like, I'm going to teach you a literary device, you'll try it, I'll redline things that you wrote, and that will be the end of it. That's not what's happening here, okay? This is different. My relationship to language is different. My relationship to writing is different. So I need to give you that as a way for us to begin, okay? I come from remarkable people. I come from amazing, miracle-making people, walk on water people. I really do. I'm not trying to be hyperbolic. My family and the context in which I was born is extraordinary. A very intensely matriarchal family made up of women who are brilliant, remarkable, impossible in their ability to stay, their ability to survive the unsurvivable. I come from women who have, in one way or another, been exceptional all their lives, okay? I come from a family that elected to rattle the cage and interrupt space in this country. The civil rights movement was, for some, about accommodations, about asking for the right to sit in the front of the bus as opposed to the back of the bus, asking for the right to walk into the front door of the Woolworth instead of the back door, right? And my family participated in that movement. My grandparents were both educators. They both got their degrees, their college degrees during the Depression. My grandmother was Native American. My grandfather was biracial, but white passing. And so he was sort of deliberately, willfully Black. You know, like he had to announce his Blackness because his Blackness wasn't perceived of when people would meet him on the street. And they were really concerned with education, and they really insisted on brilliance out of everybody, right? They wanted everyone to be in the service of their gifts, and you can't be in the service of your gifts until you know what they are, right? Until someone introduces you to what's possible about you, right? So they were really exceptional in that way. And then one day, a flyer went around the west end of Little Rock, Arkansas, which is where they were at the time, asking for families who had high school age students who were interested in this grand social experiment called desegregation to fill out this form. And they filled it out because my Aunt Carlotta was 14 years old and was preparing to enter high school. And she really just wanted textbooks that didn't have missing pages. It wasn't a loftier sort of thing than that. It was just, she wanted to be in a larger classroom, one with windows and ones that afforded her wider opportunities. At the time, the Black students in the West End of Little Rock were being educated K through 12, and usually in a church or a one-room schoolhouse. All those students sort of mixed in together. My aunt was selected. She and 8 others desegregated Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas, under the loose protection of paratroopers ordered by President Eisenhower. And many, many, many years later, she got the Congressional Medal of Honor for her contribution, right? Why am I telling you that? I'm telling you that because the context in which I was born was certainly an impressive one, and one that was framed in being extraordinary, okay? And I, as a little girl, knew I had certain expectations to live up to. Like, I knew at the age of 6, I knew I was gonna have to have a master's degree to make my grandmother happy. I knew all these things. I also knew that my family had gone through something. They had suffered a good deal. Because I would hear them talking about these things, but they always did it from such a distance. There was always so much space in between them and the thing that they were naming, because they were always stitching their suffering up, you know, like they were always buttoning it up. And no one that raised me, excluding my stepfather, which we'll get to, no one operated in anger ever in my house, or my extended family. No one ever did. No one showed up in anger ever. As a little girl, that created a lot of dissonance for me. I'm hearing the stories about lynch mobs and the house being bombed and threats of violence and all this stuff. I'm hearing all this stuff, but none of you ever get angry about anything. It was baffling to me, because as a little girl, I was always feeling uproariously about quite a few things. And it was like, there was no way to know how to hold that or how to perform from that, because it was not modeled for me, okay? And then, so my mother and father divorced when I was 2. I don't remember that. But what I do remember is that at the age of 4, my mother remarried. And the man that she married was outwardly very, very impressive in all the ways he would have had to become a part of my family. Attractive, successful, made a lot of money. He was philanthropic, he was charitable, very charitable. He gave to a lot of the private schools and the public schools and the libraries and the museums, right? He was that guy. The community loved him. And he was a monster. He really was. I mean, there's really no other way to talk about him. He introduced me to violence. He introduced me to manipulation. And he cut off a primary resource for me when I was a little girl. Because prior to meeting him, I was whole and intact. And I actually was really confident and convinced that I was special, and that whatever part of the world I wish to occupy, it belongs to me, right? But violence has a way of interrupting things. It has a way of changing everything. It changes your cognition. It changes your lexicon. It changes your relationship to things, to people, to places, to events, and how you perceive of them. And so the introduction of my stepfather was the introduction to violence, physical violence, sexual violence, emotional violence, linguistic violence. The first time I was ever called a bitch, it was my stepfather. And I was 4. And so the world was very different for me, and it was immediate. There was no like gradual descent, right? The acute absence of anger in my life or demonstrations of anger in my life, and then the astonishing presence of it as performed by my stepfather, and performed badly, performed cruelly, left me with a very a very crippling understanding, a very crippling idea about anger and the function of anger and its usefulness. Because you simply weren't allowed to be, one of the functions of being in my stepfather's house as a little girl was that I was afraid every day. And I had to practice silence every day because he was terrifying. And I couldn't let on what was going on with me. And so I had no emotional literacy either. There was no way to be demonstrably angry or demonstrably sad without consequence. And so I would feel those things in the body, and then I would mood alter them so that I could stay alive. You know what I mean? And it just created a lot of emotional illiteracy for me. So as an adult, one of the things that had to happen to me was I had to get back into the body, which was its own trial, because the body was the crime scene too. You know, you try not to go back, you know what I mean? Like if you watch those crime shows and stuff, like traveling back to the crime scene is brutal because you're analyzing the blood spatter evidence, right? There's nothing gentle about it. But for me, the body was the crime scene. So I felt very disengaged and disassociative. And then I was a mother. I became a mother. And that relationship to the body didn't hold anymore. One, because I had to be profoundly in my body to have the baby, right? It produced a very different relationship and a very different connection. And I felt feral and wild, and I was starting to sort of see the hints of the girl I used to be before the violence found her. You know what I mean? Maybe I can get back to that. But one of the things that was coming up for me was that, in fact, I was still mood altering. I was still out of integrity with myself in terms of, you know, if I was angry, I called it something else. If I was sad, I called it something else. I had to practice that. I did a lot of shadow work. You know, if you're familiar with Jungian psychology at all, I did a lot of work around my own specific shadow, looking at, naming, and holding up to the light all of the things about me that were the most unblessed, the most repressed, the most unnamed, the most unlit, the worst parts of who I was or who I become as I saw it. Had to really hold all that stuff up to the light, because what I didn't want was for it to conspire against me or my kid. The function of writing for me was, is, and probably shall always be a way in which I keep my integrity. It's also a way in which I keep working on my emotional literacy. It's a way for me to continue practicing the naming of things that are difficult to name. It is a way for me to practice being unapologetic. It is a way for me to practice being fearless, a way for me to practice using my voice, a way for me to practice being powerful. These are things you have to practice. If you're not practicing them, they are resources that are lost to you. And that's a really important thing. It's just a really important, you have to practice it, because too much about our lived reality almost asks for us to go numb, right? To check out, to move away from mentally, emotionally, or otherwise, that which is difficult, that which is challenging, or, you know, that which does not have an immediate reward. We have this conditioning. And so you do have to practice these things, or that resource is lost to you. Our time together today is going to be about the practicing of these things, okay? But I can't ask you to do something I'm not willing to do, and I can't ask you to go in a direction I'm not willing to go and that I haven't traveled many, 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 many times. I want to be very clear about that. If you feel uncomfortable with the question that's asked in terms of the writing prompts and stuff, I want you to honor that I want you to acknowledge it, which is to say, literally, either say it or write it down. This makes me uncomfortable, right? I'm not happy. I don't want to talk about this. Whatever you got to do, however you would language it, I want you to honor how you feel, what happens in the body if I say something or I ask something of you that is triggering or confronting. I want you to honor it. But then I want you to do an analysis of, am I feeling challenged by the question? Or am I triggered by the question? Because those are two very different things. If you are challenged by the question, the invitation is for you to continue interacting and engaging with that content and see what you can find. If you are triggered, what I would like for you to do is, because this is all a part of the descent, name the why. See if you can get to the bottom of it. And that's tricky. So some of what we'll do today will be to sort of show you how you can find these guideposts along the way where you go, that's me being triggered. That's me not operating in reality. Now, why did I get that? Or how did I arrive there? I'll give you an example. I used to work for the State Department. Don't ask, I don't know how that happened, but it did, and I was. And so I was working for the State Department. I was working with high school age students that were coming from conflict zones. That was sort of the umbrella. It's a big umbrella. And I worked with kids from Turkey and Germany and Cyprus, and I worked from sub-Saharan African kids. I worked with kids from all over the place. And I was the only woman in the room. And I was the only person of color in the room. And this was not astonishing to me. My whole life has sort of looked like that, private school, K through 12. So I never have an expectation of like fitting in some traditional sense in any room that I walk into. If I do, it's delightful, but I have no expectation of that, okay? So I'm in a room day after day with white men who are mildly curious about who I am because they kind of don't know how I got there, but at the same time, they just don't have the time or the bandwidth to care too much about who I am as a person. Anyway, we sat in the same room for 2 weeks in Washington, D.C., prepping this program and on. And I kept hearing the same name, this person who was basically the person that wrote the check for the program. They kept invoking his name, but I had never met him. And then one day after 2 weeks in the room, they said he would be coming in, that he wanted especially to meet me and all this stuff. When the guy got in the room, it's so wild. When he came into the room, I'm going to try to describe what it was actually like for me. I remember looking up because we heard the door opening, and I remember seeing a person walk in the room, and then it was like a Stephen King movie for me. Like it felt like the walls were warbled and moving. I felt dizzy, I felt nauseous, and I felt rage. That's what I felt right away. Whoop, all of it was just in the body. But it was all happening. It was immediate. I did not understand it. And he's attractive. He's coming in. He's smiling. He's warm. This is the person that we've been talking about for 2 weeks. This is, in essence, my boss. And when he was walking toward my seat, what I remember is feeling like if he sticks his hand out, I'll bite it off. I had no idea. I had no idea why I felt that way. But I had a physical, visceral reaction to this man. I felt dizzy to the point where as he was approaching, I abruptly stood up and I said, "I'm sorry, I need to be excused." Awkward moment. Everyone in the room is looking around, but I don't have any language available to me. I'm a kid again. And I don't know why I'm a kid again, but it's like, I don't have any of my resources. None of my skill sets are available to me. I just have to get the hell out of here. So I walked out of the room and I went in the bathroom and I threw up and I put water on my face and I'm having this whole thing. And then when I wiped my face and looked in the mirror, I wasn't me in this body. I was me in my stepfather's house. That man looked exactly like him. I'm a kid again. I am right back at the scene of the crime. He has done nothing to me. That man in that next room did nothing to me. But he is reminding me of an old wound. A wound that is so pernicious, it takes my language away. You know? It leaves me languageless. That's triggered. That is triggered. It happens in the body. Being triggered is in no way the same thing as being offended. You know, it's just not. If you have that experience during your time with me, you need to take care of yourself. All bets are off. Your only obligation is to remain safe, okay? But it's important to know the difference. So one of the things that I want to do is for the next, let's go 5 minutes. I want you to name, this is a very simple thing, at least on the surface. Name who you are, one sentence, one concise sentence. I am, fill in the blank. I am. And with this, I will be asking for those who are willing to share their I am statement. Just one line, I am. Okay, so I love you too. So here's I need 3 people at least say what their I am statements are. Linda, you got one?
I do. And it's hard for me to read it, but I'll read it.
Okay, thank you.
Can I tell you what was hard about it real quick?
Of course, that's what, oh yeah.
Okay. Because I only wanted to say pleasant things. But the hard things came and I hesitated to write them down, but I did anyway. And I was relieved when I wrote them. So anyway, this is what it says. It says, I am strong, fierce, unapologetic, lonely, often sad, connected, passionate, tired woman.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for that. Tell me a little bit more about the wound in it or the bruise in it.
The bruise in it is the sadness and lonely component, and I think because I'm the unapologetic fierce woman, and I'm often, it's interesting in our culture, that's a lonely place.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. I can absolutely relate to that. I often feel sort of drenched in solitude, even though I'm not alone, but I do carry that. And I think you're absolutely right. I think your clarity is important. Because I do think that for women in particular, to sort of if your existence is wrapped up in resistance or insisting on yourself, it's a very I mean, while you may find your coven and that's hallowed ground, that's a very holy thing, you also realize just sort of how isolating the work is, you know. And it's a hard thing to name, because it's like, it's not that you don't have community, it's just that somehow we still feel like we're standing out, in the distance. So I thank you so much for naming that. I think that's hugely important, and I think it's going to be useful to us later too. Thank you so much. Someone else want to share their I am statement? No?
I'll share.
Thank you.
I started out positive, and then there's always that but. So it was, I am older and wiser. I'm healthy and I'm open-minded. I want to share and I want to help, but I'm also overworked and stressed. So I just feel like I'm just putting out fires everywhere in my life right now. I want to help all these people and all these situations, and it's tough, but we're going to keep going.
Yeah, oh yeah, I get it. Thank you so much. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Putting out fires everywhere is another thing I can absolutely relate to. Absolutely. One more person.
I'll do it.
Okay.
I am strong, passionate, complicated, loyal, concerned, loving, extended, full and sometimes not full, conflicted, and empathetic woman.
See, one of the things here for me that comes up with those I am statements is that you all have interestingly done this thing where it's the almost like the from without, from within dichotomy for me. It's not just about the naming of the things that we know to celebrate, that we know strengthen us, that we know are good or regarded as virtues, but it's the naming of the stuff that interrupts those things, or that distracts from those things, or that complicates those things, or that still, they still create challenges and roadblocks. Even if it's just the story that exists in our head, if it's not a physical limitation, but it's the story in our heads, or the way the body feels after doing the work, right? The way the body feels, the way the heart feels, the way the brain feels after so much tugging, after saving so many people, or after risking so much, there's a cost. There's a consequence to that, right? And naming those things, putting those things next to each other is incredibly important, because at the end of the day, again, the conditioning is to prop up the good and to mute the bad, or to get whatever is regarded as negative or challenging or problematic into the margins and leave it there, right? But those things exist in the center in the body, and so those things exist in the center. And so the naming of them is, again, one way in which you get your integrity back. One of the things that I notice about me in terms of, if I want to write even a love poem, right? I don't have the ability to write a love poem without talking to you at some point about the grave I crawled out of, to emphasize how seismic the love is. I don't have the ability to simply name the, all the pretty things. The pretty things for me are emphasized by me and my relationship with memory. And memory tells me it was not always pretty. I was not always in bright rooms. I was not always held warmly. So that when I do have those moments, it always feels important for me to remember when I was in the absence of them. I do think most of us in our lives set out on a path at some point, some path of personal growth, because at some point you become burdened by memory. You become burdened by pain. At some point, we need a reckoning and a way forward. I'm going to ask you all to dig deep during our time together in terms of the writing. You have to be able to trust me to do some of this. I talked to you a little bit about my stepfather and his house, and in juxtaposition, my family of origin and the people that I come from. The girl that emerged from that house, so I was there from the age of 4 to the age of 8, okay? At the age of 8, my stepfather died in his sleep, heart attack, which I always felt was just way too gentle for him. It's way too benign. But he was gone. And I was alive. And I didn't expect to be. As a little girl, every day I woke up in that house expecting him to kill me. Every day. That's not hyperbole. Do you know how exhausting it is to operate from that kind of fear every day? Is today going to be the day? Is today going to be the day? Is today going to be the day? It was every day. What I remember is that my stepfather's house, I entered his house at the age of 4, and the first time that he molested me was, I set it right alongside, it's so wild, I had just come back from Miss Lewis's, so it was a preschool, this woman, Miss Lewis, that my stepfather insisted that my mother enroll me in for gifted and talented kids. And Miss Lewis was wonderful, and she was teaching me so much, and I was learning so fast. And I was reading, like before you knew it, she had a way of introducing language and letters to me where my brain just got it right away. And it went from not being able to read to being able to read everything. It really did. And I just remember that she had given me, and I know why this memory is coming up, because Beverly Cleary just died, the author. But she had given me one of the Ramona books. I don't know if you all are familiar with Beverly Cleary and her work. And I had been tasked with just getting through the first chapter. I'm 4, you know what I'm saying? I got through the first chapter and came home elated. Like I knew what I had done. I knew, like, the world is so available to you when the words make sense. You know what I mean? When language is happening and you're beginning to have a relationship with it. You can even see out into the distance that your relationship with language is going to be a powerful relationship, right? I'm floating on that when I get picked up from daycare and brought home. And that day, my stepfather was the one that picked me up, and I'm in the car just chattering away. And I'm, do you want me to read to you? I can read this to you. I can read the whole thing, and I'm doing all that, And he's interested. And I'm and seemingly proud of me, And then we get to the house. The very first time he molested me was that day. And so I have always had this, it's like the same time that I was learning to read, I was being molested, and I can't get them apart from each other now, and it was a wild relationship because, again, the words were happening for me. I had a relationship with language now, the written word. I always had a relationship with language, but the written word, I had a relationship with it. And it seemed that the more I learned, the more it hurt what he was doing, because my awareness was growing. It wasn't just, just words on the page. My awareness was growing. My interaction and engagement with the world was growing. And it now included this thing. And I knew he was wrong. Like, I knew that. But I couldn't reconcile it because it didn't seem like he was doing that to anybody else. I mean, my mother married him, for God's sake. She moved us over here. So this is happening to me. And so there's got to be, I have to be complicit somehow. This is the story in my head. I have to be. I need to figure out what I'm doing or failing to do that is contributing to this kind of pain so that it will stop. Somehow I deserve this. If I can figure out why that is, I can stop it. I also thought that it was possible for me to figure out the answers to all of that in books and things like that. I was constantly, and I was like, by the time even after my stepfather was long dead, I remember being really drawn to books that talked about family secrets and things like that. Like, what's her name? V.C. Andrews was the one that wrote like Flowers in the Attic and all that, right? I read those things with real enthusiasm because I felt like maybe the keys are in here, She's talking about stuff that people don't talk about. She's naming all this stuff, these family secrets, and my life looks a little bit like this. So it was validating, and I was using all of that information to try to get out of hell. Fundamentally, I was. So again, writing and reading for me holds a specific kind of witchcraft, a specific kind of sorcery, a specific kind of magic, because so much of it I poured into just to stay alive, just to remain alive. If I can identify with this character, that means I'm not alone. If I'm not alone, I don't have to kill myself. Sometimes that's the baseline. This character is going through something I'm going through. I didn't know that was happening to anyone else, because that's the other thing about violence and all that, especially when you're young, you just think you're the only person that it's happening to. And it certainly seemed so in terms of the house. It just seemed like I was the only one catching hell. So the very first time I did more than contemplate suicide, I was 7 years old. 7. Now, because it's my story, that fact didn't seem all that extraordinary to me until, again, I became a mother. And then when you have a 7-year-old in the house who's not being beaten, who doesn't have suicidal ideation as a result, they're just second graders doing what second graders do. You have to confront the damage done to you in a brand new way. Writing is what got me through that too. Because being a mother is some of the most confronting parts of what my stepfather did to me and his legacy. You know, it was frequent, and so I normalized a lot of it. I think I did that just to remain alive. And then there was no opportunity to normalize anything that had happened to me in that house once I became a mother, because again, I'm looking at children who aren't afraid every day, who aren't, you know, being locked in a playroom in the basement, they're not navigating any of the stuff that I navigated. They don't know the world. My 22-year-old son does not know the world now the way I knew it at 8. He doesn't. So my relationship with language is that of the relationship a grave digger has to the grave, or I'm constantly excavating and having to sort of like move things out of the way, peer into the darkness, see what I can lift out of the soil, see if it's worth cultivating or if it needs to go back into the ground. That's my relationship. I was asked one time, what is the job of a poet? And I said that the job description is complicated because for some poets, your job is to bury the body, but for some, your job is to exhume the bodies. For some, it's an opportunity for you to talk to God, and for others, it's an opportunity for you to curse God. For some of us, it's just about naming things, writing our way out. You know, that's what we're going to do today for a little while. Okay. So I want to read you something first as a way in. Okay. And then we'll take probably like a 5-minute break, and then we'll reset. This poem, which I believe some of you may have heard before. It's hard for me to know though, because my Zoom reality now, Zoom performances past and present, I don't remember. So this poem though, I wrote this poem. It's one of those accidental poems. It doesn't even feel like a poem to me. A person that I went to high school with, he's still one of my best friends. We met when I was 16 years old. He's like my polar opposite. He's an engineer. He's very appropriate and untattooed, and he almost never cusses anyone out. And like, you know, but we are very close, and we've always been. And he was describing on the phone the girl he met in high school. He's describing me. And I was so undone by it, because I realized, oh, he's still describing the hologram. You know, like, that's the lie that I created, so that I had perfected, by the way, by high school, so that folks didn't ask me too many questions. And then it wasn't like, you couldn't just look at me and tell that I had all that backstory. I didn't want that. I did not want anyone to see me as broken. So I had created, you know, like a really elaborate hologram so that you did not perceive of those things. You didn't perceive of my stepfather. You didn't perceive of the nights locked in the basement in the playroom. You didn't perceive of that. You didn't perceive of the day that I had a physical exam right before I turned 8, and my doctor, Dr. White, so crazy that I'm remembering these names, that my doctor, Dr. White, told my mother, she's got some weird bruising and her hymen is broken. And I thought, oh, this is going to be the moment where this all comes out, And I was poised to come up with something, but then he did it for me. He said, because my mother said, I don't understand what you mean. And he said, I wouldn't worry about that. You know, she's so active with climbing trees and the bike riding and all the stuff that she does. That's normal. I wouldn't even worry about it. I just have to note it. Just like that, right? It all got erased. I had worked so hard once I got out of my stepfather's house, to make it so that no one perceived of any of those stories. You would not see that on me when you met me. But so many years later, to hear him describe the hologram and think that it was me destabilized me. I wanted to get back in integrity with him, and I wanted to get back in integrity with myself. So when we got off the phone, I started writing down all of the things that he didn't see, all the things I was carrying into that first interaction that he didn't perceive of. I'll read this, and then we'll take a break to reset for some writing, okay? When we met, the ghost of a girl who looked like me stepped out, fashioned a tiara from kitchen knives, declared me queen, pulled me from behind the gravestones and whispered your name. And these looted bones, this storied body, emptied out of whimsy, this burned out church, masquerading as girl, this split tongue, this wolf, this malarial witch walloped in curses, this torn slip, this menagerie of bruises, this locust-ridden Easter dress, this jagged constellation of wingless birds, heretical, unholy, this oozing thorn, the arsenic I almost ate, unblessed by God, beholden to all my sins, the death music of my childhood, the sum of sorcery and rotting dollhouses, spent shell casings on schoolyards and weekends with rapists, the sum of stepfather's hands and locked playrooms, the devil in the details, the wasps in my belly, the puppy Leo killed, the gun my grandfather loaded the same day, dead dogs in the dumpster, the promiscuity of all my friends, every one of them but me. The days I overthrew death, the day Dennis and Marcus did it. The murdered children I played with. My grandmother's premonitions, my stepbrother's abuses, my sister's absence, the razor blades and the Halloween candy, and the funerals that took all morning. The dress they buried Jakisha in, the crunch of Carla's bones under that car, her blood running down the sewage drain, and the way I forgot all about it the next day. The priest who was molesting her, the nuns who beat me, the rosaries that hung from their necks, the twin girls next door with third-degree burns, their mama who lit the match, the everyday crucifixions, the pornography in my best friend's basement, the cases of beer her father drank, the way he beat his wife after. The boys, like kettles whistling, who murdered with indifference, the way I still hung out with them on weekends. The time I fingered a pistol. The sum of chalk outlines and girls assaulted in basements, the alchemical concert of new breasts and rapacious uncle figures, Gerald, Richard, Junior, Alex, how each tried to steal something from me, how I held on to every offense and learned how to fight when 4 girls held me down, how religious the blood in my mouth, the bruises on my neck the next day like first place ribbons, the wild I grew, the fangs too, the hunger. I met you on a Monday. And a sudden choir of ungoverned wind, thickening to spring, banged in the back of my throat, thundered out, declared me somehow holy, somehow worthy of walking up and telling you my name. When we come back, we're going to try our hand at a poem that sort of is structured like that one, okay? Not a poem, I shouldn't have said poem, a writing exercise that gets you to some of that thing right there. So let's go 5, so let's see. Oh, 12:58, let's round it up. 105, okay? 1:05. Oh, well, that's
Sounds good.
whatever time zone you're in. Be back in 6 minutes. 6 minutes? 5 minutes
Sounds
out?
good.
Okay.
Dominic, you are still muted. FYI.
Should I give another 30 seconds, a minute, or should I go?
Yeah, we're right at 5 after. I think we should jump right in.
Okay. So, this is what I would like. On the subject of secret keeping, what happens if you just don't participate in that tradition anymore? What happens if you make a brand new world in which it's not only not required of you, not asked of you, but it is an abhorred thing? What if you committed to not keeping any of it back? What if the stuff that makes you feel most ashamed, the stuff that dogs your spirit, is in the room when you are, and it's not tucked back, it's not some marginalized version of you. It's in the room with you. It is made available to folks the same way your gifts are. What if those parts of your personhood were allowed to be in the center of the room along with all that is good and celebrated about you? What would happen? Who'd be happy? Who'd be destroyed? What relationships would change? I think it's just always so important to pay attention to the ecosystem and how the ecosystem is interrupted when a woman in particular begins to show up in the fullness of herself, when she mutes nothing. Just what happens to the ecosystem when you tell the truth? Not versions of the truth, right? But the truth. Not a parceled out, version of the truth. Not a bite-sized portion, the truth. What in your life changes if you commit to that? If you say, you know what, social experiment for the next 30 days, no matter who's in front of me, I'm just gonna tell the truth. The micro and the macro. So that means when you're in the produce aisle and someone's just trying to be polite and they're operating from their conditioning, and so they go, hey, how you doing? Which is standard operating procedure. Or when you go to work or whatever your environment is, and when people do that sort of muscle memory, hey, how are you thing, because they're not really asking you how you are. They're just, saying hi. They don't want you to tell a story when they ask you that. And for the most part, most of us, I don't want to make assumptions about this group, but for the most part, when people passing us by or whatever, or at our jobs say, how you doing? We go, pretty good. I'm great, how are you? Don't we do that? Are you always good when you say you're good? Right. So that's a lie. That's a lie you told. Now, it's not nefarious in the sense that you weren't trying to con anybody necessarily, but it harms you. Even those micro moments pull you out of emotional literacy and emotional integrity. Even those hey, how are you moments, and we just fire back the obligatory, I'm good, how are you, harms you. I don't do that. I don't do that. People in my life have learned not to ask unless they want to hear some shit. They know not to ask. Do you know what I mean? If you don't have the time, don't ask me. Because I'm going to tell you how I am. You know what I mean? I'm going to tell you. So, and that, again, it's not even about, I was about to say it's not about centering myself, but sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. Sometimes I'm absolutely centering myself unapologetically. Because again, sometimes the space that I take up in the world and the relationships that I have, I'm taking care of everybody. And I'm not ever in the center. It's what my mama needs, it's what the kids need, it's what my partner needs, it's you know what I mean? It's what the community needs, it's what this group, I'm taking care of everybody. So on occasion, it is about centering myself, the practicing of that, you know? But more than that for me, it's about, I don't want to get off this planet with a noose around my neck. I don't want to get off this planet with all of this unsaid shit. I don't. I had a grandfather who, when he lay dying, past his 90th year, started to try to get back in integrity with himself behind things he should have said in the 30s that he did not say. My grandfather was hallucinating at one point and cussing out a racist lieutenant colonel in World War II who kept calling him a stupid N-word, even though my grandfather had a college degree and he himself had a third grade education, but he was presiding over my grandfather, and my grandfather had to just take it and eat crap. And he said nothing, and he didn't resist or rebel or any of that in any observable way. And then as he lay dying, he had the conversations with that lieutenant colonel that he in his own right, he didn't feel he could have in real time. But he wasn't going to get off the planet with that in his body still. He wasn't going to do it. And as he lay dying, his invitation to me was, don't be like me. Live with your head in the lion's mouth. Say it all. Say it all. Let your relationships be based on folks who know who you actually are. Not some performance, but who you actually are. And that mattered to me very much. That's the invitation I'm now giving to you. That's how I pay my grandfather's gift forward. Try it. I don't care how long you do it. You could do it for 5 days. You could do it for 10 days. You could do it for 15 days. You could do it for 20. You could do it for 30. But what you're going to do right now is start with you in the writing. You're going to think about that which you normally tuck back so that you don't mess up the tea party. You know what I'm saying? That's why Linda's I am statement, that's why you all, starting with that, the way that you all addressed that was so important. She didn't just say the stuff that you know is good, is convenient to amplify. She's not just bringing with like when you interact with Linda, you're not just interacting with the powerful woman, the present one. You're interacting with the one that is also woman enough and human enough to recognize what it feels like to be lonely. You get all of it. You get all of it. Whether she's naming that for you or not, you're getting all of it. So one of the things that helps me grant permission to myself in this is like, you're not actually keeping this from anybody. They're interacting with the sad parts of who you are. They're interacting with the frustrated parts of who you are. They're interacting with the uncertain parts of who you are, the triggered parts of who you are. They're getting all of that. They just don't know what it is. They don't know what to call it because you're still trying to dress stuff up so as not to interrupt the tea party, right? So we're gonna interrupt the tea party because there's no point, in my opinion, there's no point, thank you, in throwing barbed wire around your life. There's no point in that. There's no point in being trapped by your own story. There's no point in that. From my perspective, there's no point in that. One could argue back and say, because I've said this before to people who said, no, there's a point to it. I don't want to hurt my mama's feelings. Or there's a point to it. My husband, I don't want my husband to know that. Or there's a point to it. My children, I don't want my kids to know that sometimes I don't know why I elected to be a mother. I don't want them to know that because I don't want that to create a wound for them. So there's a reason why I don't share this, or there's a reason why I don't share that. I understand those things. I understand that navigation. I truly, truly do. What you're going to write, though, is you get to use this moment as hallowed ground. There is no one that can be harmed by the telling. There is no one who will be inconvenienced. But I am asking for you to I want you to go on a tour of your most unblessed self. Now, if this was me, and I'll write with you, by the way, if this was me, one of the things that I do, if it's hard, and I know it's hard, I almost just give you camera shot images with no explanation. So if you notice in that piece that I read, it talked about like twin girls next door with third-degree burns, nuns with rosaries around their necks who beat me. It talked about, you get these images, the stories behind those things, some of those things are difficult for me to talk about, but I carry them into every room. I really mean it. That poem could have been 10 pages long, but what I was seeking to do was bring you the stuff that I know for sure I bring into every room, which means it was things that shifted my consciousness or my cognition or my language or my body. Something happened and I was not the same person after that. Those things are what I tried to name, right? As opposed to just, these are stories I haven't told you yet. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the stuff that has truly, truly affected and influenced your personhood, but it's not necessarily easy stuff. For your purpose of just getting it out of your body, you could almost make a list poem. You could number it if you need that kind of structure, 10 on the page, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And what you can do to get yourself into it is to say something like, there's a lot of ways to do this. One of the things I've used with students is I'll say, trick the brain and trick your consciousness into giving you what you're asking for. Because for so many of us, if you've built up a certain resistance to telling certain stories, you have a risk manager now that comes online that buttresses and buffers that. So I may want to tell you about this one moment with my stepfather, but my risk manager in my consciousness juts out and goes, nope. We don't talk about that. We made that pact when you were 8. And then what happens is what feels like writer's block right after that. but it's really just my risk manager. It's the thing that I created to survive what was unsurvivable. We've all done it. That's the way the brain works. That's the way your psyche works. If there's something you saw that happened to you, that you heard, something you bore witness to, it could be something you heard about in some instances, but something in your brain went bing, you just did not have the resources to handle it. You do something with that data when you don't have the emotional resources to handle the thing that's happening anyway. Now, for some of us, we'll just delete the file, but it's still there. It's still on the hard drive, but we delete it, right? It's why when you ask my mama, like, do you remember when my mother blocked out the 80s? I feel like my mother deleted that decade because that decade was my stepmother. So if I'll ask her about something that was like a good memory, a barbecue we went to or something when I was 10, she does not remember because she just deleted the whole file, right? It's still there on the hard drive, but she can't access it, okay? So one thing you do is you simply say, I'm not supposed to talk about this, but, and then you write it, you know? Or if I was still interested in keeping secrets, I might not tell you about, and then write it. I don't know why it works, but it works. Your consciousness is almost like a trap door for the consciousness. Your risk manager doesn't necessarily jump out because you're going, I'm not gonna talk about it, but if I was to talk about it, kind of a thing. It's a trick, okay? I would like for you to get on the elevator and start at the 10th floor. And the 10th floor is one memory and the 9th floor is another. It's the descent. The 8th floor is another one. Each stop is a thing. It's a person. It could literally be on my elevator. Among the things that, impact my life, my personhood and all of that is that my grandfather died and I don't have him anymore. And so he would be on that descent, that he's not here anymore. So I want you to do that, starting at the top floor, the 10th floor. If you don't have 10 things, I don't want to actually be too prescriptive here. You know what's best. 10 floors, 5 floors, you know what's best. But it is the descent. So when you get to the ground level is something that's pretty hard for you to navigate. If you want to go further, then you can take us to the basement. But it's in the spirit of, these are the things that I bring with me. That in the interest of not interrupting the tea party, I keep these things back. Now let me, and please be writing. You don't need to focus too much on what I'm saying. I just want to make sure that I give you enough room and permission and opportunity to do so. So I'm gonna talk a little bit more for you. Some of the things that we bring with us, it's not even about the fact that it's a secret so much as it hurt. It was a bruise. We felt God walloped when it happened. And so it's not a thing that we're eager to remember, much less create language for. I really have thought a lot about what someone gets when they're in the room with me and how it got there, right? Like I'm very quick to anger because it was not demonstrated in any way by my family of origin. It was demonstrated horribly by my stepfather, and I don't know what it looks like in the middle. I don't know what a balanced version of it necessarily looks like. So it's something that I've had to practice and work on my whole life. That creates a lot of shame for me. The realization that when I became a mother, that I remember having this really awful moment of looking at my firstborn son, my 2-year-old, who was a domestic terrorist, by the way, when he was 2. Jesus, okay? But he tipped me over into this whole other kind of consciousness, because I didn't know that in my stepfather's house, I had not just inherited the bruises, but that I had also inherited the template for abuse, to be an abuser. I didn't know that until the first time I felt anger towards my firstborn son. And then I was devastated. And then I was terrified. And then I was ashamed. Here's the thing though, that was a thing that I would have preferred to bury and tell nobody about. But you know what would have happened if I'd have buried that fact about who I was? I would have abused my kid. That's what would have happened. Instead, the very first time I felt real anger, and he was 2 and just doing what 2-year-olds do, I called my mother and said, I need to talk to somebody. I need to talk to somebody. Because I'm angry with him in a way that's not appropriate, and I know where that's coming from. And my stepfather does not get to be in the room with my son. And in the naming of that, I got the help that I needed so that I would not be a noose around my son's neck. The naming of things that you're ashamed of is almost harder than the naming of things that happened to you. Really. It's almost harder. So when you're thinking about that descent, don't think about it in terms of I'm asking you to tell me about 5 terrible things that were done to you. No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about risking something by not keeping those secrets, by not holding those memories in the body without curating language for them, without giving someone the opportunity to know what you carry, without arming somebody with the data. You can structure this any way you want. I thought of the elevator because of the descent. If that doesn't work for you metaphorically, please don't feel married to it. I could structure this for myself where I took you on a tour of my childhood. I could structure it that way too, you know. I could structure it where "10 stories I will not die with, 10 stories I will not, go to the grave with," something like that. I could structure it in a few different ways to just grant myself permission to name, When I named those things in that poem, that's the stuff I think about almost every day. I, in fact, saw a girl named Carla Ricketts when I was 12 years old, hit by a car. And it was a girl I was mean to. So it holds a different weight for me. But she was trying to hang out with me and my friends, and I didn't want her to. And she kept trying to it was a half day, and the ritual was to walk to the McDonald's that was about 6 blocks away from Blessed Sacrament. And anyway, I'm with my group of friends, and Carla's trying to kick it. She's trying to hang out with us, and so she's trying to sort of slow her pace so that we catch up to her, and we keep shooing her on. After like the 3rd time, she gave up, and she just was walking alone. She was always alone. She got to the intersection. Colfax is a busy, busy thoroughfare in Denver. She got to the crosswalk, and this woman stopped and waved Carla on. and Carla stepped out and the woman hit the gas. Hit Carla, then threw her car in reverse and hit her again. And then just drove off slowly. It was like being in a movie. And I remember everything now, but I remember this woman stopping her car right behind that, right like where Carla's body was. This woman, this blonde woman, I remember her jumping out of her car, grabbing what was either a blanket or a coat, and kind of going like she didn't even want to look at the body. She just kind of tossed this thing, in the direction of the body. And I remember all of my friends screaming and wailing. And I remember I wasn't. I remember I was staring at the street because Carla's blood was traveling toward us, toward the sewage drain. I mean, I watched it. I was like transfixed on it. She was traveling toward us. And I couldn't stop staring. And I remember when the police came, I remember the officer tried to kind of grab, circle me up and move me to the car, and I could not move. He had to lift me up like a child, put me in the back of the police car. I was 12 when that happened. I went to Carla's funeral and everything, but you know what? Right after that, I deleted the file. But because it was such a significant thing, I didn't delete her death. I had to delete her life. She couldn't have existed at all. So I just completely removed her from the hard drive. Then she came back on a reboot. When decades later, I'm a teacher walking with students, and my student, Maria Ridgway, stepped into the crosswalk, and a lady trying to make the light hit her. Maria did not die, but she was hit in front of me. And when her body was flying backwards, I stopped seeing Maria and I started seeing Carla. And then it was all back. I had all of it again. But I was grown and I had the skill sets to then be able to process it and write about it. I had a deeper toolbox by that time. That is why it lives in that poem, because I bring Carla Ricketts into every room. But you don't necessarily know that, you don't necessarily know that. But I am a person who, because of how I treated Carla Ricketts, I'm pretty willful and I'm pretty deliberate about trying to take care of folks now. So that's the legacy. She's in every room, whether you knew that was why you were seeing what you were seeing from me or not. She's in every room, but naming it is important. The reference to four girls holding me down is something I bring into every room. I was in the 4th grade. Unaccustomed to public school. I only did 1 year of public school in my entire educated background, 4th grade. And I didn't know the rules of engagement, and I was in an underperforming school, and I was making enemies because the teachers were looking me in the eye and they were calling on me, and I knew all the answers and my clothes were always clean and all that stuff. And the other kids didn't have that experience, and I wasn't paying enough attention to that. And so after school one day, 4 girls decided I needed to understand a little bit. And so they jumped me. And I was devastated. And I was devastated less by the physical blows, but more by them saying while they were beating me, like, you think you're so smart, you think you're cute. Like, they were saying things about me that I either would not elect to change or could not change. So it was like, oh, you're quarreling with who I am as a person. I'm getting beat up because of who I am as a person. It was devastating to me. I bring that into every room. But I rarely name it. So the naming of it is a certain kind of permission. It grants a certain kind of access. to you, to your consciousness, so that your consciousness can work on your behalf. Listen, if you've spent 20 years keeping secrets, that's too long. Most of us have spent twice that amount of time. But if you've spent 10 years, it's why kids, it's literally why I wish teachers had greater proficiency. Kids from certain homes have had a decade of practice of protecting a pedophile. They've had a decade of practice, you know what I mean? Protecting the neighborhood pedophile or whatever. It ain't easy. So to then ask them, just tell us, little Johnny, what happened to you? It's not easy. Every day they wake up, they re-enroll in that lie. Every day they wake up. It's not easy to unpack this stuff. I don't want to suggest to you that it is. That's why I'm talking. That's why I'm trying to show you one of the things you have to do is there's no magic trick. There really isn't. There's no rabbit up my sleeve. I do it by doing it. I simply practice it. I practice it. Micro to macro. So the micro, like I told you, is I do not give the obligatory response back to the how are you question. I don't do that. That's the micro. The macro is there can be 1,000 strangers in a room and I'm going to tell you about my stepfather molesting me when I was a little girl. I'm going to tell you about it. I'm going to tell you about the ugly parts of my personality that I grew as a result of being in that house and not ever wanting to feel powerless again. Because listen to me, when I got out of his house, when he was dead and I was inexplicably alive, the one thing that was clear was I wasn't going back. I was not going back to anybody's basement. I was not going back to the deep, the dark, the dank. I wasn't going back to being silent. I wasn't going back to being afraid. I wasn't. Period. And that was a choice that I made at 8. But that requires its own practice. You can't practice fearlessness theoretically. You can't read about that shit. You can't train fear out of the body by reading books about it. You can't. No matter what any author says, you cannot practice fearlessness theoretically. You have to practice it. Literally. The practical application is I'm stepping into a situation where there are no guarantees. That's a certain kind of practicing fearlessness. I am stepping into a situation, there are no guarantees. Or I'm stepping into a room where I know there are more adversaries than there are support. I know it. I'm coming anyway. That's practicing. That's practicing fearlessness. When I was a little girl, I didn't have soft examples like that. I had people shooting guns in my neighborhood. And while everyone else was running away, which you should do, the neurotypical response is to run away, get yourself to safety. I walked toward the gunfire. That's what I was doing at 9. I do it now. I do that now. It's a hard habit to break. I do it now. If I hear gunshots or something, I go toward it. Still, I practiced fearlessness as a little girl that way because I was so paralyzed and so crippled by what happened to me in my stepfather's house. I was so damaged by feeling terrified every single day. I was exhausted and I was 8 years old. So I'm like, I'm not doing this again. I have to change the tradition. And that's what I elected to do. So I'm practicing truth telling. I'm practicing being unapologetic. I'm practicing it. From the micro to the macro, I tested in ecosystems that I know about, ecosystems I kind of control, my house. But then I practiced it in ecosystems that are an extension of me, classrooms and places where I'm teaching or whatever. I practice it there too. It's a scaffolded thing. I want you to remain safe, but I want you to remain alive. And I want you to remain human. And I want you to have access to all of your moving parts, all of it, all of it. I don't want you to hate any part of who you are. I don't want you to operate from shame ever. So the only way to really attack that is to name that which you would prefer to unname. It's the only way to do it. There's no trickery here. That's the only way to do it. If there's a family member you don't love, see, this is the stuff. We can get into the weeds with it, but it's like, there are elements of my family that I am loath to talk about. Not because there was some bad, like there was some deep, dark secret, but because it's dizzying for me to say to you, my mother is the most amazing woman that I have ever known, and my mother did not protect me enough. Both of those things are true. She's amazing, and she did not protect me enough. You know, there were times growing up, I absolutely needed a wolf. She doesn't have that resource, which explains why I'm a wolf. The psychology is real clear. You know what I mean? I became what I needed. That's what happened. I became it. I wasn't getting it, you know? So I became it. If I had me when I was a little girl, it'd be way different. But, you know, there's unintended consequences too, right? So would my stepfather have been able to do what he did? Oh, hell no. Hell no. And there would have been a slew of other things that I wouldn't have negotiated that simply would not have happened. Uncle figures in my neighborhood that suddenly started acting gross and weird, you know, because I started growing breasts, would have been impossible if it had me, you know. But my children had me, and you know what the consequence of that is? Nobody bothered them. In terms of like nobody held them in the basement and no shit like that. But if they went to school and your regular run-of-the-mill bullying was happening, you think they told me? No. You know why they didn't? Because all they had to do was see how I responded to the first time somebody messed with them. That's all they had to see. And they were like, she's crazy. So we can't tell her stuff because she overreacts. See, that's an unintended consequence. In my quest to not be, you know, like, I felt so sad as a little girl because I knew how profoundly unprotected I was. And it made me sad. I didn't want to be guilty of that for my children. I didn't want them to ever be like, I needed her to, and she didn't, right? I didn't want that. I didn't want that. So I let them know, as soon as they had language, they knew. If someone harms you, I will destroy them. Like, they knew that. But when it sounds good, but then when you realize, oh no, she means it. Like, she means it. Then you realize my mom doesn't have the ability to approach these things from a soft, gentle place. She doesn't have the ability to be philosophical. And sometimes you need the soft, the gentle, and the philosophical. So an unintended consequence of how I show up as a wolf is it kept my children from telling me about some of the, you know, they'd wait a year. Like I remember taking them to school and my daughter going, oh, there's Zaire. He's nice to me now, but last year he was so mean to me. And I'm like, what do you know? Like, I'm ready to, you know, she's like, Mom, it was last year. And the reason why I didn't tell you is because of that right there. Like, you know, so it had unintended consequences, but I don't have the ability to shift it because I can't be guilty of that which harmed me. So I became what I needed, and I'll live with that. I'll live with that. And there's nuance and stuff and work that I have to constantly do. I say all of that to you to say, sometimes it's just the nuances in your family of origin that are things you keep back, because those sometimes are the hardest things to talk about. They're just hard. It's just hard. If you didn't get what you needed, it's hard. If you got something and it didn't work out, it's hard. If one of your parents failed you in any way, it's hard. By their presence, by their absence, by their methodologies, in any way. If any of that is true, it's hard to talk about that stuff. For whatever reason, psychologically, it still feels like a betrayal in the body when we do that. It still feels like we're betraying our people to do that. You know what I mean? To talk about, if our mother didn't get it right, or if our dad didn't, it feels like we're betraying them somehow. That's a risk manager coming online to keep you from naming. This exercise, though, is giving you, go ahead.
I just wanted to, can I just share something?
Please.
My father, his like, I think it was his 78th birthday would have been a few days ago when I wrote it, but he died when he was 50, kind of a tragic death. And it was, I wrote this tribute to him, and I was writing it, and I was writing the things I admired and respected, and I wanted that. And then I got to the place, he was a lousy parent. He was a horrible father. And I was like, I have to include that in this tribute. Like, I needed to say that in the tribute. Like, I couldn't not say it. And so I did. And it was really amazing because one of his longtime friends, I wrote it on social media, it was a public piece. And his longtime friend, she said to me, she said, "That's one thing I really appreciate about you is you're always real." And she really saw the realness in what I was saying, because I did admire a lot of things about him as a person, but he was a horrible father. And
that's my relationship with my father too. I get it.
And I thought, I did get up against a little bit of a roadblock. It's kind of what you're saying, where I didn't want to put that in there, but it wasn't honest if I didn't. I had to.
That's exactly right.
I didn't go into the detail. I just said that. I was like, he I really didn't respect him as a father.
And it was hard to do, right?
It was, but it was necessary.
Yeah, it's that. It's exactly that. That's a perfect example. It's exactly that. It really is. And I feel like a lot of times it's those things, it's the nuance, I can't tell you how many workshops, how much shadow work, how much I have done with group after group after group after group, where we think we're going to be naming sort of like the social ills that plague us, or the ways in which patriarchy, and ultimately, before we can get to any of that, people have to deal with their family of origin wounds. They have to. That's the stuff that stays around. That's the stuff. The context in which we were born, that which we inherited, and the legacy of that is huge. Because for most of us, if we say, who taught you how to be insecure? Or who taught you, how to be uncertain? Or where did you first feel fear? Or where did you go? A lot of us, it was our family of origin. Somebody in our family taught us that. Because we're not in the world really for quite a few years. Our primary influencers are our parents and our extended family. Most 4- or 5-year-olds know something about shame, sadly, and embarrassment. They do. Most of them do. They know about fear. Most of them know how to lie. 2-year-olds know how to lie. 2-year-olds know how to steal the cookie off the cookie jar, out of the cookie jar, and look you dead in your face when you say, "Did you take a cookie?" And they go, so we have all of this stuff very, very early. Our family of origin is usually the thing that is the last thing that we have to get flat. It's usually the last, because the heft is so significant. The weight, the gravity of what happens in families is so significant. So your descent might literally be, you know, people in your family, you know. On the 10th floor, you find my grandmother, broken already from the 14-year-old son she buried, unable to laugh. On the 9th floor, my grandfather's hands, the plants they grew, the shotguns they held, the babies too. On the 8th floor, Carla Ricketts and the crosswalk. On the 7th, seeing Ronnie Reed murder a boy I went to school with. The next floor, Sister Delia in the cloakroom, beating me for having the right answer. Do you see what I'm saying? It's the stuff I carry. It's the stuff I carry. And in some instances, you know, like I tell people this all the time. I talk about my stepfather so much, to my chagrin, to be honest with you. Like, I'm 46. He died when I was 8. You know what I mean? I didn't have a life with him. And he's not my daddy. I don't have the burden of that. That matters, because I have friends who have to talk about their actual fathers, or their, like Linda just did, who talk about their bio dads, and their bio dads were the ones that did all the destruction. That is not my testimony. This was my stepfather. I met him at 4. He was dead by the time I was 8. Surely he should not have a bigger legacy than my grandfather, who I had my whole life. Surely he should not have a bigger legacy than my mama, than my, you know what I mean? Like, surely he shouldn't, but that's the nature of violence. My stepfather's influence on my parenting is more significant than my mother's some days. He's the reason I don't do corporal punishment. He's the reason I know something about how important it is to, you know, like, protect your kids from linguistic violence and blah, blah. He's the reason for that. And I had him for 4 years.
Dominique, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
And this came up 2 weeks ago with Cornelia Cho as well, the work we were doing there. And she was using the term legacy, and you're utilizing that term. And I really resonate with utilizing that term myself in lieu of the term trauma. And I wonder if you're doing that on purpose, if that's something you've thought about.
Yeah, because here's the thing. Trauma has a lineage attached to it. It really does. The lineage of trauma is specific. And again, Linda, it's kind of like, in one body, what am I trying to get to? Let me try this another way. Let me use a personal example, because this would be the one thing that it's not a secret, but it's certainly like, I don't talk about it. And this will be precedent setting, because I'm not related to any of you. And so you will be the people who know this, that only family members know. So I have 4 children. My oldest is 22. I have twins that are 20, a boy and a girl, and I have a 12-year-old. The twins, Naja and Amir, are polar opposites, and they always have been in every single way. I think it was very clear to me very early that Naja was going to create an identity that was about pleasing others. She realized very early the payout in that. And Amir watched her do that, and I think he felt like, well, okay, cool, that position is taken. You know what I mean? People pleaser, the person that, cool, then I'll be the rebel. I'll be the rabble rouser. I recognize that behavior because he is more like me than any of my other children. All right. I just was not born a boy, but he is more like me than they are in that regard. Sees a closed door and he wants to kick it open. All right. Same family, same parents, same household, same everything. But where everyone but Amir would hear me talk about things that I've navigated, things that I've borne witness to, things that happened to me. All of the other children treated those stories as there, but for the grace of God, go I kind of a thing, But my son didn't. My son said, she has a story, and I don't. She's not even permitting me to have a story because she won't let me spend the night anywhere. She won't let me. I remember, I'll never forget him saying, I don't let him get enough of the world, right? And so we bumped heads. As soon as he started middle school, we were bumping heads because from my perspective, he wasn't going to let me do my job. My job is to protect you. You don't want to be protected. But he was so interested in hearing about all the graves that I crawled out of. I don't even think I realized right away he was fetishizing it. I just was talking to him about stuff and hoping that he could hear the lesson in it and keep himself away from, something similar or whatever. But he was fetishizing it. And so then, of course, his peer group that he was choosing was kids that were broken, kids that didn't have parents, kids, that were on the street, that were negotiating homelessness, substance abuse, whatever, because they had a story. And he wanted that. He really wanted to be in proximity to folks who had a testimony, And I resented it because for me, it was like, I don't even know. I still don't even think I have language for it. I deeply resented him being so willy-nilly about creating trauma for himself. Like only somebody who doesn't know what real trauma is doing what you're doing. That was really my calculation. Anyway, I think I say all that to say, when I think about legacy now and trauma, I think about what my son Amir does with my legacy, with the stories that I've collected, that this body has collected, the trauma done to it. And how he needed to have his own scars, whereas the other children were content to simply hear about mine and keep away from anything that might administer that to them, right? Trauma does have a lineage, it does have a legacy. I don't think that my son would be who he is if I hadn't elected to share with him the details of my backstory. I don't think that he would have suffered the way that he has. I don't think that he would have put himself through so much if he hadn't had that from me, that if he hadn't inherited that from me, because he really did treat it as something that he was obligated to know for himself, you know? Because he's the other thing is that they all are so and I don't know what category to put this in. It makes me feel ashamed, but I don't know why. My children have an almost like, they almost respond to me the way that fans do. They have a very starry-eyed sort of perspective of me or relationship with me. It's not useful at all. It's not useful to see your mother in that way, and not as a woman, and it's not useful at all, not to anybody. And so the consequence of my stepfather, that lineage is a lineage being practiced out in real time by my son. He's not abusing anybody but himself, but that's my stepfather's legacy being performed by my son. And trauma locks itself into your DNA. It really does. It changes your DNA. And some days I'm very sad about the fact that my children, with the exception of the youngest, with the exception of the 12-year-old, that the body that carried them was a body that was so beleaguered. Like, I still hadn't done enough work yet when I was a mother to 3 kids. I had my first son at 24, right out of grad school, and I had the twins 2 years later at 26. So at 26, I'm mother to 3, and I hadn't done any of that shadow work yet, really. Not to the extent that I needed to host so many. Does that make sense? I had not done enough work. And so it's a profound thing to look at the difference between the older 3 and my 12-year-old, because my 12-year-old doesn't have any of the residue of my stepfather. You know, none of it. Because I did all that work. He didn't get a broken person. He got me. You know, he got a woman that was intact. But they didn't. Do you know what I'm saying? They didn't. The body that literally their home, their first home, was marred with chaos. Truly. Truly. And there's a legacy there. There's a consequence for that. The lineage of suffering there is significant because, yeah, I hadn't done enough work on myself to be a mother when I became a mother. Happened after. And that was irresponsible of me. It happened after, you know? And that's something that I'm ashamed of. And that I don't talk about very much. But it's something that I bring into every room. It's something that is in every interaction that I have. It's something that impacts, you know, my intimate relationships. Yeah.
Thank you. I super appreciate you sharing that.
Of course.
And it really sits with me in terms of, as I was writing my dissent, I came across something that I would say has a similar edge in terms of a transition between how I was being in the past, which I couldn't help but be that way, and then into how I want to be in the present, or how I can be, because I have some more awareness. But that in between place of like having compassion for yourself and feeling that shame, like that feels like such a rich place to go to, in terms of like having compassion for ourselves in that place. And then the other dissonance for me, and it was in that tribute to my father too, is that I also have to deal with the dissonance of other people's response to
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah, no, I get it. Same Say more
It
though.
feels like-
I get it. Yeah.
It feels like all those pieces, and actually my experience with the tribute was quite positive because my father's friend saw it. She wasn't offended by it. She was okay with the truth. My mother also saw it and spoke and was also okay with the truth. When I was holding it thinking they might not be okay with the truth. And that was my thing that I had to live with until I said it. And then I'm like, oh, okay. So I was holding that. That was hurting me to hold it. And now it's, and they could have responded differently. I'm sure somebody would, but but I don't know until I put it out there. So and I just really appreciate it. I just could really resonate with what you're saying in terms of seeing some of the stuff that's an in-between place for me.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
It really is. I think it's an in-between place, period, Linda. I don't even think it's just for you. I think it's an in-between place. And I think you're absolutely right. There's so much raw material right there. It's a really juicy place, actually. It's a dizzying place. But it's a really juicy place. I go back and forth between, maybe it's not a struggle, that's not the correct word. I go back and forth between holding myself accountable and having empathy for myself. I have so much empathy. I do. But I also, I'm trying to get this right. I am aware of the fact that I am fucking amazing. And I'm serious. There's no other way for me to say that. I am aware. Like, no one could come along and trip me up and have me thinking that I don't have value or no. I'm very clear, but I am clear because of the graves I crawled out of. I'm clear because, like, I know how unkillable I am because of how many attempts on my life happened. It's not convenient data or convenient confidence. I know what I know because I bled first. I know what I know because I bled first, because I suffered much, because I should have died and I didn't. I know what I know about me because of that. That puts a lot of starch in my back. It really does. And at the same time, I'm really sad about the fact that all of my data comes from the grave, or like that so much of my data, the bulk of it, the weight of it, the heft, the stuff that like is really like meaningful to me, that really matters to me, is the stuff that I grew out of the worst moments. Like, there's no way for me to get away from any of that because all of that stuff has told me who I am. It creates dissonance for me because one of the things that I have said to my son, the one that I was talking about, and every other student I've ever had, is you don't have to be tragic. You don't have to be. You deserve joy and abundance and unbloodied hands. But I contradict myself because it was all the shadow stuff. It was all the valley low stuff that made me who I am. Really. I don't know who I would be, Linda, if my stepfather hadn't done what he did. Isn't that awful? I don't know who I would be if he hadn't done what he did. If he didn't do what he did, I wouldn't be writing poems because I wouldn't have shit to say. Not like this, I wouldn't be. I'd be like my sisters. I have 2 older sisters that did not negotiate any of that from him. And they are nothing like me. They do not talk like me. They don't show up in the world like me. And they don't understand why I do what I do. It's baffling to them. My oldest sister, we had a moment, a really terrible moment actually between us that was about her saying to me, why do you always have to tell people that though? Like, why do you have to tell people that he did that to you? Why? You know what I mean? You got total strangers knowing this shit about our family and blah, blah, blah. Why do you have, okay, cool. It happened, you know, it was terrible. Shouldn't have happened. He hurt you, yada, yada. But why do you feel the need to talk about it so much? That was where she was at. And I was offended. I was offended. I talk about him so much because he reminds me that I am supernatural. It's a weird dichotomy though. But I don't know how convinced I would be in the absence of that experience in his house. I'd know I was smart. I'd know a lot of stuff that every other woman in my family knows. I know a lot of stuff, but but I'm the toughest person in my family. I am. I'm the toughest person here. And that's not an accident. So in order for me to even access that virtue, I'm bringing in the lineage of trauma. Does that make sense? Like it's complicated. And what I wish for you is for you all is what I wish for everybody. And that is simply an unfettered existence. I want for you to live out loud every day for as long as you can. And that means that sometimes you will need to bleed out loud. That you are willing to do that too. It's not just the good stuff. It's not just the celebrations. It's not the exaltations. It's not the hallelujah moments only, but it's your willingness to bleed out loud in the center of the room where everybody was just hoping or expecting that you would tuck it back so that they could keep having the tea party, you know? But instead you're standing in the middle of the room bleeding and you're naming. You're standing and accusing. You're naming. I want that for you too, because I don't know how we really can say anything about feminism or womanism or activism or this work being radical in any way if we are not willing to first model what it looks like to be impossible and truthful in every room. Not just the hallelujah corners, but in every room. When, as I said before, there is no guarantee of acceptance. No guarantee of an applause. When you know you're risking something to do it, and you do it anyway, because that's gonna be the breadcrumb trail for the people behind you. That's gonna be the one. What you're willing to do. What ecosystem you're willing to interrupt, how you're willing to jet out, how you're willing to get your chin out over your feet is going to be the breadcrumb trail for the next girl to follow. She didn't read it in the book, she saw you do it. She saw you do it and it became possible. Now it's possible for her. It's just wild, but you all know that already. Somebody has to do it to permission everybody else. Somebody has to do it. Miracles happen like that the same way that atrocities happen like that. We know that though. Somebody does a thing and everyone in the room has a reaction to it. Some people affirm and applaud. Some people are aghast and they think it's despicable. Some people are the bystanders, the quiet bystanders. They're peeking at you from behind the pole, but they're taking notes. This is interesting. Mm-hmm. Some people run for their lives. They don't know what the hell you're doing, but they've never seen you before. They don't want to know. We have to model it. Go ahead.
Somebody asked a question and I think you're answering it, but I just want to check with them and make sure because I'm not sure.
Okay.
So Ashley was asking, she was asking about the people who crawl into a burrow, who are sitting behind the shame and the fear and the anger. So I guess, Ashley, did that answer your question, or do you want to elaborate on it? Because I'm not sure.
What was the question exactly?
Well, that's what I'm kind of trying to understand the
Okay.
question, actually.
Yeah, see, the way that you're saying is, that's what gave you the power, that your experience is what gave you that power to break through. But what about the ones that crawl into like shame and fear and anger? And so what I'm saying is, like, if I kind of like just tell you a little something quick here. What, like, my 10th thing I have written down was that I have an uncle, I'm 33. I have an uncle who, even to this day, I see him when he comes up from Texas, and he's like, "Oh, you're so beautiful. You're so sexy. Like, you've grown into such a wonderful, beautiful woman, like, give me a hug. I missed you," and always wants to like kiss on the lips and things like that, and wants to hug my daughter and my kids. And then, we have a huge history of abuse in the family through all the generations. It goes down farther, and let's just say I have my number 5 getting closer to number 1. I have one that says, my other uncle telling me at my grandma's funeral this in July last year, "Oh, I thought you would let me have Macy for the summer." That's my daughter. Like, that made me so uncomfortable. Like, I'm just going to these things, and as you keep going, and then, a little higher up, my brother, when he graduated high school, he took the chance to tell us and be like, "Well, our cousin, blah, blah, he molested me." And like, I thought I protected him from those people, like the ones that I saw, the ones that I knew. And the abuse just runs so deep that as I keep going, getting closer down my list, my number 3 is my kids. Why can't we ever go there? Or, I just want to go play with my cousins, or I want to do this, and I don't let them. And as you keep going, but if, my dad, my mom, like, they know about the abuse that happened to my brother. So where does it end? Like, we still see these people, you know what I mean? We still see them every day. Like, sit there and they know, but you just live in that shame. Like, it's shameful for my brother, but why is it not something that my dad would be like, "Hey, like, you did this. We opened our home to you." And that's where I'm at, because it makes my husband uncomfortable the way that I am, because I don't let my kids wrestle. You know what I mean? I don't let them like touch each other. They're all, my kids are stair steps. So they're 10, 11, and 12. And my daughter's the middle child. So I'm like, "Don't touch your sister." You know what I mean? And I say it, I actually say it out loud. And when they're just playing, and he's like, "They're just kids. They're just playing." And I try not to be like that, but it's something that it brings the anger out in me. And so I'm asking, like, you used yours as a power, but other people, they sit there in fear and anger. And how do you step out of that? Like, how do you get to a place where you're not doing that?
Well, there's a couple things. First of all, thank you for naming all of that, and for your honesty, because that's a really big deal. And there's also this that I want to say to you. I mentioned a while ago about normalizing brutish acts, and normalizing it. We do that, right? We have to do something with the data that we don't know what to do with. So a lot of times the practice is to normalize. There's a reason why in many families, there's actually a legacy of abuse. I had a good friend who said, all of the women, he said, at Thanksgiving, the table is, because all of the women in my family have been molested by all of the men in my family. So at Thanksgiving, it's the predators and their victims at the table. And everybody knows this is the legacy. This is like almost like a feature of our family identity. Okay? No one's interrupting it. No one is interrupting the tradition. Everyone is bleeding silently and obligatorily. This is the tradition of my family. He said, the only way for me to break the tradition is to not get married. I cannot be in a relationship, because if I'm in a relationship and she gets pregnant and I have a kid, I don't know how to, I'm quoting him, I wouldn't know how to tell my wife she should not leave me in the room alone with our kid because of the legacy of my family. I don't even know if that's in me. Now that's his testimony. The consequence, that lineage of trauma, my friend said he would prefer to die alone. He won't date anybody. Now, so I say that to you to say, what you're describing in terms of your family, your parents, uncles coming up to you, and they have they're operating with a certain amount of immunity, so they can say shit to you like you look sexy, and I thought I was gonna have your daughter for the summer. They can do that because the tradition has not been interrupted. That's why they can do that. But you don't have to interrupt the tradition by tearing the house up or by burning it down. You don't even have to interrupt the tradition by putting anybody in jail. You interrupt the tradition by doing exactly what you're doing. You draw a boundary, you're ferocious about protecting your children, and you tell whoever it is what they can and cannot do with you, what access they can and cannot have with you. It sounds to me like you're already trying to interrupt the legacy of your family. Now, as it relates to me talking about what happened to me as a power, what feels true to me is I know that I was supposed to die in my stepfather's house. I don't think that. I know that. He got close quite a few times because he was brutal. It was a blackout kind of thing that he would do. He would check out, he would beat you. I woke up most of the time from a beating. You know, I would wake up naked, bloody in the bed. There would always be a new doll right there because that was him like buying my silence or whatever. And I knew that that's what that was too. I always woke up with double vision. I always had a hard time speaking after. My tongue almost felt like it didn't fit in my mouth. And that happened a lot. So I was starting to operate from the expectation that he was going to kill me, and then I would be shocked to wake up. You know, it didn't happen this time or whatever. It wasn't a power for me until he was gone. He had to die first for me to go, holy shit, he's gone and I'm alive. I should do something with that. You know, I should do something with that. Because that's not the way it was supposed to go. But he's dead and I'm alive. I should figure out how to stay this way, you know? And I really had to drill down into the marrow of my experience, Ashley, which is to say, things happened to me that I did not deserve, things that were not in my handwriting. What is in my handwriting is the hallelujah. I will leave the hex to the one who hurt me. That's what I felt like. The rest of this, though, is in my handwriting. When I resurrect, how I resurrect, however many more people I try to raise from the dead, however many more Lazarus moments I can create for others, that's where my power comes from. It's in and it's subjective, but it is truly in the, I know for sure I was supposed to die. And I didn't. Least I can do is be amazing. Least I can do is be impossible out here, be supernatural, model it. I can show you what it's like when somebody holds you down and brutalizes you and they take everything from you but your life. And you manage to somehow crawl out from under that debris and keep going. And not just keep going in some limping, bruised way, but keep going in a walk on water, watch this work way. I have constructed my whole identity from that. My whole identity is constructed from the moments in which I have been impossible. Some of that shit was probably dumb luck. But I have made I have wrapped an identity around it. So you don't have to become some warrior woman. You don't have to be Xena. You don't have to jut out with the spear and the sword and shield template is not the template that you have to have at all. Your template, where your ferocity comes from, as I hear it, is that nobody gets to fuck with your kids.
Very powerful. Like, I'm very powerful.
What's more powerful than that, though?
Mm-hmm.
You're saying, I made this. I made that. You don't get to touch that. Because so to me, you're asking for something that you already embody. You do it every day. You're demonstrating that every day. You're demonstrating how unkillable and how unfuckwittable you are every day. Because you've drawn a boundary that it sounds like other people in your family haven't drawn. You weren't the beneficiary of the boundary you're drawing now. You won't harm my children. They're going to see the evidence of being held warmly. They're going to feel that. They're going to know. Who cares if it lands as mysterious to folks who don't know what you know? They don't have to, sweetheart. They don't. They do not have to always understand your calculation. What they do need to understand, though, is this is the boundary you drew. This is what you're saying. Your word is bond. That's it. I'm protecting mine. I'm being what I needed. That's what you're doing. You're being the medicine. You are. You're being the tourniquet. I don't know of anything more miraculous than that. I don't know of anything more miraculous than when we interrupt legacies of carnage and brutality, even if it was our daddy who did it, our mama who did it, our grandparents who showed it. If it's in every photo album of ours, and we have all the opportunity in the world to just continue on in that tradition, but we interrupt it. I can't think of anything more miraculous than that. I can't. So you're asking for something, in my opinion, that you already have. You don't have to do it by waving a sword. You drew a boundary. And you're saying, what my experience was will not be that of my children's. The hex belongs to the people who do the hurting. The hallelujah belongs to you.
Thank you very much.
Of course.
Do you, Dominic, want to take another question, or do you have a?
Sure. Yeah, let's go.
Okay. So, and I'm not, again, I'm gonna read the question and then I probably will ask the person to elaborate.
Okay.
Because I think you've kind of answered it, but maybe there's something there I'm not seeing.
Sure.
But so Nika was asking, what about the space of having a feeling of trauma in our bodies, but having no clear space to point to? What about finding our power within the minutia when there's nothing to say? This is our story. So she probably has to elaborate a little bit on that. I'm not.
Okay.
Nika, are you willing to elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's just that point of hearing and really honoring the power of your story and where it has brought you and the lioness that has then birthed from that, and feeling that desire and where that reflects within my own self of what that is, but feeling like to dig into it, there are so many more subtle things that I have to look at, that I have to draw on, to write down. There's nothing major that I can point to, and it's something I've struggled with since I was a kid, of like, on the surface, my life looks good and a lot of people envy it and all of these things, but then I'm still feeling all of this deeper and darker. And so I feel almost unworthy of feeling that, because I know people down the street who have it much worse off, and yet they're happier than I am. They're not complaining.
Well, what do the people down the street have to do with you?
Comparison.
Right? See, that's not powerful. That's not useful to you. That's not useful to you, right? So you feel what you feel. You should honor it, but you should also interrogate it. You should honor it, but you should also interrogate it. Can you get to the source? Have you tried?
I have been working. I've also been doing shadow work and talking and working with mentors. And
What'd you come up with?
it being emotionally abandoned as a kid.
What do you mind? What was your, were you able to write an I am statement?
Yes.
What was it?
I am wild at heart.
When weren't you?
Never.
You've always been wild at heart.
It's just been hidden in some.
Okay. And so when you say you're wild at heart, what do you mean?
I mean, the part within that's always going to be a wild child who's always going to look at the universe and see magic and wonder and possibilities and dream.
Has someone ever called you a wild child?
Mm-hmm.
Who?
People strangers who I don't know, who meet me and they say, "Oh, you're an old soul." They've called me a wild child.
Does it feel like a compliment?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Does it feel like something that is an identity for you, like something you hold close? You care about that?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. What threatens your ability to be a wild child?
Putting on a good girl mask.
Why would you do that? Who benefits when you do that?
The people around, nobody, but the people around me is the story.
The people around you benefit from you not doing that? Like, what's at risk for you? If you talk about folks being worse off but being happier, and that you navigate a certain kind of sadness. Have you had that sadness as long as you can remember, or do you remember when it came online?
I think it's been there in a lot of ways, or just like a deep interrogation of the world. Yeah. It's been there since a kid.
Yeah. No, the thing about being feral or being wild is to be plugged in, to be available. Not just to that which is poetic about this life, but to that which is tragic about this life, right?
Mm-hmm.
It means you're available to it all. My mother's like that. She's a receiver. She's an empath, you know. If somebody's hurting and bleeding over there, she's hurting and bleeding over here for them. If you care about the preservation of that as an identity, then you are electing to be available to certain kinds of suffering.
Mm.
It's just something you should interrogate. Really, if that identity is important to you, then it comes with a certain negotiation of suffering. And if you find that you're bleeding out too much, then we might need to recalibrate a little bit. But if you find that it feels like balance to you, you know, like I feel the slings and arrows, but I also, I have a good dose of that with, that which brings me joy, then if you have balance, then there may not be anything to tinker with. But you have to interrogate if this is actually an identity, or if you think this is something you deserve to feel, or deserve, I'm serious, and only you will know the answer to that. Because for a good long while in my life, I fashioned an identity out of being this warrior kind of energy, and prepared to whoop ass and name names and call out shit, and conflict was my jam, all of that, and that was an identity. And then I wrote about it. Sometimes that's what happens, but then I wrote about warrior woman as an identity, and I'm like, I don't want to do this, because that means the only time I'm really being myself is when there's a skirmish happening, when there's conflict. Trench warfare is what's if trench warfare is what's defining the woman I am, I don't want it. That's what I was kind of getting to in terms of my stepfather. It's a slippery slope for me, because my experience in his house, in fact, lets me know how unkillable I am. But I don't want, as an identity, to have to, or to true up my identity, to have to constantly be at war, or constantly having to prove my mettle, or having to constantly go back to the crime scene. Or I don't want that as an identity. I thought I did until I interrogated it. And then I realized I don't want you to have to invoke all the dead bodies in order to talk about who I am. I don't want you to. I want you to talk about that which is alive and growing when you invoke my name. So it had to shift, but I had to interrogate it first. And so that's why I was saying the first order of business is to figure out, like, if this is an identity that you want to protect, and that means that you are willing to take on these slings and arrows, and recognize that you will be available to certain kinds of suffering. If that is not really what is meant for you, then I think that you should interrogate how you got there, and then what you want to grow in its place. You know what I mean? Does it make sense at all? Okay. Is there anyone who wants to share? Because I need to give you some more writing prompts before we start to shut down. But is there anyone who wants to share their descent with me, with us? And when you share, you don't have to feel obligated to provide us with an explanation for what you wrote. I just want to know if there's anyone who's interested in sharing what they wrote with us. You don't have to. I'm just curious.
Can I ask you a question while maybe people are thinking?
Of course.
Because as you were talking, I got curious about if you've seen this process in your writing over time. If you were to look back at your writing from 10 years ago to where you're sitting today, like the things you're describing about interrogating, I'm just curious if you see like a memoir there of of change and transformation in your writing over time.
Yeah, tons. Because again, I spent so much time cultivating the warrior. And for me, everything was about that. Everything was a sort of I had a salt the earth kind of way of thinking about things. And I almost operated with the staunch refusal of, like, anything soft about my womanness had to be backburnered. I couldn't afford it. Could not afford it. Also, I just felt like the nature of men, I can't afford it. Like, I can't even afford to show you all, like, whatever is soft and gentle about me because it will be exploited or misunderstood, misinterpreted, misapplied, disregarded. I can't afford it. And then it began to change. Nothing will show you your deficits like your children. But also your intimate relationships will too. You know, they hold a mirror up to you. And I started to feel unhappy with the woman that I said I was. I didn't want it to be about all the blood and the warfare and the ability to whoop somebody's ass and cuss somebody out. And, you know, there was a certain amount of safety in being known as the girl that took no shit. There's a certain amount of safety in that. But it didn't give me any room to heal. I just was like packing wounds with mud like soldiers do and getting back out there, you know? And I was still hemorrhaging in so many places. And so it was like, I really want to be the tourniquet. I got to know how to apply it to myself first, you know? I have to. Got to figure it out. And that's not weakness. It's not, you know, it's me saying, I deserve to heal. I deserve to be whole. I don't have to be war whipped. I don't have to be God walloped. I don't have to be those things, because as I'm sure you know, everyone on the planet is really comfortable with any one of us being tragic or sacrificial. No one is interrupted if we do those things. If we are sacrificial, everybody is prepared for that. You know, if we're silent, almost everybody's prepared for that. If we just take it on the chin, you know, blah, blah, most folks are prepared for that. Your actual healing is a radical thing that you dig into. It's radical. You throw your elbows out to do that. To heal and to be selfish, to draw boundaries in terms of, I know you need me to be the following things for you, but one, I'm not even sure if I'm able or willing to be those things until I first figure out what I'm holding. That work is mine. That also goes back to why it feels so solitary, so isolating. The inward journey is inward. It's you in the dark. It's you, you know what I mean? Seeking the light, but it's you. So who I was 10 years ago is worlds away from who I am now. Who I was 20 years ago is unrecognized. I'm unrecognizable. I worry sometimes, Linda, about how my writing always travels to the painful and the sad and the broken parts. The thing that happened that I didn't think should have happened, or the body on the ground that I didn't think should be a body on the ground, or, you know, the crime scene, the rape kit, the poetry always finds that. And I recently started to worry about, am I unintentionally and inadvertently, am I suggesting that I don't know. I don't want anybody to normalize being brutalized, even if it's, you know, to be able to have a testimony or a hallelujah at the end, or to be able to say, I made it. I don't want anybody to hear me from a place of like, I don't want anyone to do what my son did. I don't want my broken parts to be fetishized and seen as neat, you know, or interesting, or because it's not why I'm curating language for them. I'm curating language for them. I almost feel like I'm writing these things because they serve as like markers, as almost unmarked graves, or graves that I then inscribe, because I died so many, I sacrificed so much, or my body all but left me so many places to get here. And nobody knows that but me and the person that almost took me out. And I write these poems as the evidence of my having survived it. You know, like I don't want anybody to interact with me and think that that didn't happen to me because I know how to find joy now, or because I know how to love now, or I blah, blah, blah. And so you think that those things didn't happen to me. No, they happened to me. And somewhere in that transaction, I felt like I deserved to win. Somewhere in that transaction, I felt like I deserved to remain alive. But I am thinking constantly about the language that I curate and what I share with the world, and wanting to make sure that people hear that the hero's journey is largely about recognizing that you deserve to win. That's it. That you deserve to win. I don't want to keep stepping over so many unmarked graves and acting like I don't see them. I don't want people to feel like, in the interest of being a good woman, or in the interest of being a good leader, or in the interest of being a good mother, I said suture up these parts and present something a bit more intact to be consumed. I don't want any of that. So I'm trying all the time to be persistent in my evolution. And I'm constantly interrogating who I have been and who I intend to be. And recognizing the pitfalls in some of it, you know, because again, maybe if I wrote more about, if I could write more in terms of just like what happens when you're a victorious woman, or what happens after the battle, or whatever, perhaps that's where I'm supposed to travel to. But I also know that if it's in the body and it's coming out in the writing, then you are still unreconciled. And so it still needs to be said. It still needs to be addressed. You know, so as long as I'm still writing about my stepfather, he's still relevant. When I no longer have anything to say about him, then I can put him away. But as long as he's still peering out, you know, over my shoulder and looking at different interactions, he's relevant, and he still has the ability to conspire against me. And so I have to keep sort of naming. One writing exercise that I would invite you all to consider, if you feel like you are a person that has done a fair amount of secret keeping, or you know, sort of existing in the dark. You can do I like this Russian doll, Russian nesting doll writing exercise. I literally bought a Russian nesting doll for my daughter, and you know how it's the doll, and then you screw the head off, and then there's another doll. Okay, but that's shadow work right there. That's how I saw it. I remove my stepfather, and there's something else. I remove that thing, and there's something else. I'm trying to get to the bottom, trying to get to the base, that last doll left whose head doesn't come off. Does that make sense? I'm trying to get to that last doll whose head does not come off. But I have to go through 8 things before I can get to the doll who is whole and intact, whose head does not come off. You can write from that place of the Russian nesting doll, you know, I take off my na, and there's my blah, blah, blah. Or I remove the head of my father. I have written from that place, thinking about a Russian nesting doll, and how you have to go through this process of unearthing and screwing and unscrewing to get to the one doll that's the tiniest, that is whole and intact, whose head does not come off. And that has been my writing process, and that has been the shadow work that I have had to do. I'm trying to get to that final form where my head does not come off. You know what I mean? I think also you might consider writing the 5 plagues and the 5 miracles from your childhood. Now, this is my Catholic schooling showing, but you know, plagues and miracles, right? The 5 plagues of my childhood and the 5 miracles. You might also think about something Linda sort of alluded to. You might also think about writing a eulogy for someone who hurt you badly. I would prefer for you not to do it for if it was your abuser, but certainly unless you feel like there's value for you in doing that. I've done it. I did it. I eulogized my stepfather. Some people though don't. It depends on how you hold that wound. Some people, it's not appropriate for them to eulogize their abuser because that Stockholm syndrome shit is real. And so you have to really take some inventory. Where it does prove useful though is when we're talking about family of origin stuff. Truly. Eulogizing a person who has harmed you, because it's exactly what Linda said. I'm gonna tell you everything. He was great. He's great in these ways. And he was atrocious in these. He was atrocious. I'm gonna name it. Because again, and I've said this, it's a running joke in my family. I swear, I'll get my partner and he'll tell you. I said, do not have a funeral for me where people get up there and start saying shit like, she was a sweetheart, because that is bullshit. No, I was not. No, I wasn't. No, I wasn't. So don't do that. That is not how you honor me. That is not how you honor. Don't eulogize me like that. Tell the truth. Tell the truth. Sometimes she was an asshole. Sometimes you couldn't tell her shit. Go ahead and tell the truth. Go ahead and tell the truth, because that's going to be me in a life well lived. But you might consider, especially if it's someone who, family of origin, eulogizing a person who harmed you has its own kind of liberation attached to it for you. You don't have to operate with the venom in your body around this person. You don't have to treat your disappointment about them as a secret. You get to get your integrity back. I loved my father and he was a disappointment. You get to do that. So that exercise proves useful for folks who have that kind of a wound. Okay. If we're thinking about some of you might do well to write a letter to the thing that you have enjoyed the least about your body or your brain or your heart or your head or your choices. Write a love letter to that thing. To honor that which you have sort of a predisposition, like a predispositional idea of repulsion about, is kind of extraordinary too. I honor the wolf that I've been. It doesn't always work out, but I have written many a thank you letter to myself, my willingness to protect my children no matter what. I've written a love letter to the wolf that I am, the wolf that I grew when my stepfather died, just to honor that. I've done that too. I want to make sure I give you more than that though. I want to also, oh, this is important. For some of you in the writing, you're going to want to pull on the threads of memory. I do that a lot in the writing. Go back and get something. Okay, I'll just go back and get it. Because in the writing, a lot of times what I'm really ultimately trying to do is go back and rescue the little girl that I was. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to exploit her, and I'm not trying to make her sound tragic. I'm trying to go back and get her. You know what I mean? Like you watch those Vietnam movies and they say we don't leave our wounded behind. I feel like I left my wounded behind. I'm trying to go back and get her. Okay. So a lot of times that's my intent. That's the function of the writing for me. Well, one thing about memory is, and I have lots of conversations with writers and stuff about this, because memory is hard. And if you've dealt with trauma, you've deleted some files. You have, or you've revised the hell out of it, right? And so I have some poet friends who say, if you don't remember it the right way, like, then you should write it factually and almost like the way a journalist would write things, you know what I mean? Like, this is what happened, this was the time frame, these were the people involved. I don't have that testimony. I think you should write it the way you remember it. I think if the memory becomes too much of a noose around your neck, I think you should incorporate magical realism so that you can save yourself. So if you have gotten tired of naming your stepfather, perhaps it's a wolf that shows up at the picnic, right? Doesn't have to be, you can use metaphor to save yourself. You're still telling the truth. It's just a trap door. I have used magical realism to save myself from moments that happened when I was a kid where I didn't escape, but when I wrote about it, I wrote myself flying out of the room. You know what I mean? Like literally wings squelching from my back and flying out of the basement. Obviously that did not happen, but in how I choose to remember it, I flew out of there, right? You have permission to do that. You really do. You do not have to remember it the way it was. You have to remember it the way you hold it. That's really important to me. Now, again, you'll talk to some other people who say something totally different. And I'll give a quick example. Because it was a reference in that poem that I read to you. I said the puppy Leo killed. On the 4th of July, a year after my stepfather was dead, there was a man who in my neighborhood who was always drunk, and we knew he was beating his wife because we could see the bad job she did of trying to cover the bruises with her makeup. And he had 2 kids, Tasha and Corey, and they lived next door to me. They had moved in, they were renting the house next door to us, and they were always knocking on my front door wanting to play and stuff. And I knew they were tragic, so I didn't want anything to do with tragic, because remember, I'm 1 year out of my stepfather's house and I'm trying to be a wolf. I knew they were tragic, but my mother would make me be nice to them. So anyway, one Saturday morning, they come to my house, they knock on the door, I open it, annoyed, in my bathrobe, prepared to tell them that, gone, and they had a puppy. This was shocking. They said their dad bought them a puppy. He never did anything nice for these kids. He was always drunk every day. Leo, he just never did anything nice. So I came outside, and I'm with Tasha and Corey and the puppy, and before long, Wanda Jackson's coming out of her house, and my best friend Binky's coming out of hers, and there's Tanisha, coming out of hers, and there's a circle, a halo of girls on my front lawn with this puppy. And then after a little while, I looked up, and I saw Leo coming up the road, and he was drunk, and I knew it, and he had a brown bottle, and he was stumbling, and it was like 11 in the morning. I knew something horrible was gonna happen. And I had the opportunity to warn my friends in advance, and I didn't, and I still don't know why I didn't. And when he got there, once he got close, he's berating the kids. Didn't I tell you not to bring that goddamn dog out here? And he's going off on them, and they're crying. And he's swatting at them, telling them to go in the house. So Tasha and Corey go in the house. And I'm standing here with my friends, and we're baffled. We don't know what's wrong. And then he reaches down and he grabs that puppy by the scruff of the neck, and he threw it. And its skull broke open on the curb across the street in front of all of us. Now, I'm gonna tell you like I remember it. All of us were wailing, screaming and wailing and gnashing our teeth, loud enough for my grandfather to come outside, take a look at the scene, see the dead dog, see the crying little girls, grab a shotgun and go next door to Leo's house and tell him he was going to have to move out of the neighborhood, that he wasn't welcome there anymore. And that's my memory. Okay. I've written a poem about it. My mother heard me read that poem one day though and said, that's not what happened at all. All of your friends were crying. You were not. You were just staring at the blood in the street, which is consistent with me, right? 3 years later, staring at Carla Ricketts' blood. I say all that to say to you, I apparently have elected to remember myself as being more neurotypical than I was as a kid. But I don't correct the record in the writing. When I write about it, I say we were wailing and gnashing our teeth, because even though I might not have been doing outwardly the way I hold that memory in my body, I was wailing and gnashing my teeth. Do you understand? You have permission. You really do. I recognize that it's time. I want to make sure that if there's Q&A or anything lingering, I want to make sure that I offer that before we go.
If anybody has anything lingering you want to say, you can put it in the chat or you can open your mic and.
You don't have to. Also, if there's stuff that you just don't want to share with the whole group and you need to talk to me about it or ask me a question privately, you may do so. My email address is my first and middle name, Dominique Christina @gmail.com. So please feel free to send me anything, whatever, or if you wrote something and you want an eye on it, please feel free to send it. If there are folks who are interested in more writing prompts, send me an email. I got you for that too.
Dominique, could I ask, just as a group, would you be willing to send us a list of writing prompts that we could just send with the thank you email to people?
Yeah. So should I just send it to you, Linda?
Yeah, just send us a list and we'll just send that out so people can, just feel inspired to keep working with it.
Absolutely. I got you.
Yeah. We have a comment in the chat that says from Jasmine, this is my first introduction to Dominique and it has been a powerful beginning to the work I need to do. Thank you for this.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, if Bethany, could you drop Dominique's email in the chat so people have it? And then Sarah says, thank you, Dominique. This was very inspirational and powerful.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I speak for a lot of women when we say, thank you for sharing your truth. I think it's helping us uncover our truth and have the courage to go there, because it can be a scary place.
Oh, I know it can. I know it can. But you also can do it and you deserve to win.
All right, so ladies, if they're, oh, go ahead.
I got one quick comment. I think the most powerful thing you said for me was to go ahead and be the person that leaves the breadcrumb trail to help other women. That's what I want to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. Thank you.
Definitely some more, a lot of thanks and appreciation, a lot of gratitude in the chat. Thank you for your inspiring work, helping us go deeper, giving us these tools, because that's so important. So as we kind of wrap up, of course, huge thanks to Dominique, and thank you to everyone who shared today, shared part of your truth with us. It does take a lot to do that. So thank you for being vulnerable and for going there. And I invite everyone to, hold some space for yourself for the rest of the day, kind of let this sink in, kind of let your body process what needs to be processed, and just give yourself a lot of grace in the near future. And then to wrap us up, we have Ashley with just a few reminders for us. Thanks, Ashley.
You're welcome. And thank you so much, Dominique. What a powerful session that was. I had full body chills more than once. I felt something deep inside myself I haven't felt before, and it was a vulnerable moment, and I'm thankful for that. Just a reminder, our next workshop is in this series is called Embodied Wisdom, a Wise Woman Approach to Health in a Phytophobic Medicalized World with Mary Lou Singleton. And no matter how many workshops that you sign up for in the series, everyone is welcome to the final ceremony celebration on April 25th. It's going to be an opportunity to celebrate, share, and process the series as a community. And a recording of this session and any other ones that you signed up for will be emailed to you at the end of the series. Also, before I forget, our 10th annual spring conference registration is still open with lots of opportunities and extra things to be discovered for that weekend. We have presenters like Vandana Shiva, Rosemary Gladstar, Lila June, Susan Weed, Dennis Williams, Mary Lou Singleton, and so many more wise women who have previously been presenters with us. And we invite you to check that out if you're intrigued.
Absolutely. And I do want to say that Dominique will be there to share a little bit of her poetry with us. So looking forward to that as well. But again, thank you everyone for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your evening and take care. Take lots of care.